Chapter 595. When the first ray of sunlight pierced through the clouds and illuminated the earth, Chu Qingyan and the others were already on their way to the Fuli mountain range. The light cavalry set off on the road. Their footsteps were swift and silent, and they did not alarm anyone. The Fuli mountain range was only an hour's journey from the village, so before the sun had fully awakened, the group had already arrived at the foot of the mountain. Looking up at the endless mountain range, Chu Qingyan was a little stunned. This mountain is so high. The Fuli mountain range was not just a single mountain, it was the collective name of dozens of peaks. The peaks were intertwined and connected, but because of the terrain, there was still snow in front of them. At a glance, it was all white. The sun shined down from the top of the mountain and Chu Qingyan felt that her eyes were sparkling and even her breath was cold. This was the uncanny workmanship of nature. It was so beautiful that it made people feel relaxed and happy. In other places, spring flowers were already in full bloom, but this place was still a world of ice and snow. Fortunately, under the reminder of the burly man, they all brought thick clothes to keep out the cold. "Master, little Gongzi, please follow this subordinate." As soon as they arrived, someone came to receive them. Facing this large snowy mountain range, Chu Qingyan was still a little confused. If she got lost here, it would not be a joke. After all, every mountain looked so similar. Fortunately, there was someone to lead the way. Xiao and the others abandoned their horses and walked up. The snow was very deep and when Chu Qingyan stepped on it, her whole calf sank. She looked at the peak with cold sweat. Because of the geographical restrictions, they could only walk and did not use their qinggong. She did not know when they would reach the peak. "Keep up." Xiao turned around and looked at Chu Qingyan who was lagging behind and urged her. When they were outside, as long as she pretended to be his subordinate, as long as she was by his side, he would not take care of her. In his eyes, there was no difference between a woman and a man, only the identity of a subordinate and a master. Chu Qingyan understood that as her master, he had to set an example and not show any favoritism. Thus, along the way, she had never complained or made him feel bad. However, Hualing, Turin, and the others didn't think so. "Our master is too unromantic. Shouldn't he give the little princess a hand at this time?" Hualing whispered in Turin's ear. "Did you see the clothes the young master was wearing? It was men's clothing. Master should also pay attention to the influence." Turin meant that his master would not mix up public and private affairs because of personal reasons. But Hualing didn't understand it this way. Even if she's dressed as a man, she's still the little princess. "We've already recognized the little princess as master, so what is master thinking? I guess the master is the same as you. He doesn't know." Turin shook his head and quickened his pace. Originally, master and little princess consort had been through so many things together in the past few years, so they should have already let nature take its course. But who knew that it would disappear just like that? Hualing rubbed the back of his head. It really was a hard-to-solve mystery. Chu Qingyan naturally did not know that the matter between her and Xiao had long become the topic of conversation for Xiao cavalry. It was listed as an unsolved mystery, and there was no other answer. However, even if she knew, she would not be able to provide an answer. "Master, our secret base is behind that snow mountain." The large man stood on a rock and pointed out. Chu Qingyan was already a bit tired at this time. She leaned against a rock to rest and looked in the direction the large man was pointing. She saw that they still had to cross another snow mountain. This wasn't good. They had walked from morning to evening and had already crossed 3 snow mountains. They were about to use up all their strength. Let's rest for a bit. We'll continue later." Xiao raised his hand and readied his troops to rest. He turned around to look for Chu Qingyan's figure in the crowd. Then, he found a red figure in a group of tall and burly subordinates and slowly walked over. The little fellow had once said that she liked red the most. Red represented passion and brilliance. So over the years, he had collected things related to red for her. Red hair accessories, red clothes. Now, she was wearing a mask and a red outfit. She just stood there, looking indescribably neat and tidy. He felt that there was no one in this world more suited to red than her. Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes and looked at the fire clouds in the sky. Her expression was a bit satisfied. Water. A voice sounded in her ears. Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked over and saw a man holding a water bag with one hand and a large fire cloud behind him. It seemed like he was the only color in the world. She stared blankly for a long time. When he frowned in confusion, she came back to her senses and took the water bag in his hand. She softly said thank you and then lowered her head to drink. Qingyan, you have something on your mind. Xiao Su looked at her side profile and suddenly said. She happened to have a mouthful of water in her throat. Hearing his words, she choked beautifully. Cough cough. Chu Qingyan coughed until tears were about to fall. Xiao Su didn't expect her to have such a big reaction. He paused for a moment and then reached out to help her pat her back to calm her down. How old are you? Can't you drink water properly? Xiao Su felt that she was so old, but she was still careless. Isn't it because you deliberately opened your mouth to scare me when I was drinking water? After taking a breath, Chu Qingyan looked at him and complained. What do you mean by having something on my mind? Can't we have a proper chat? I've read in a book that children your age will more or less have something on their minds. I saw that you've been absent-minded recently, so I'm guessing that you're hiding something from me. Xiao Su turned his gaze and landed on a pile of snow not far away. He almost blurted out the parenting scripture. It was better to skip over this kind of thing. Chu Qingyan was very curious. What kind of book would write about this kind of thing? An analysis of puberty? Xiao Su coughed a few times. I forgot. I've read it before. Chu Qingyan looked at him suspiciously. This person was the legendary person with an eidetic memory. How could he forget something like that? That was too surprising. Big ice block, you're a little strange. At this moment, Chu Qingyan didn't know if it was because of the empty space or because of the casual conversation between the two, but she felt that the awkward atmosphere between the two of them seemed to have been blown away by the mountain breeze. She was also able to face him calmly and joke around. The little fellow was much more normal now. However, Xiao Su didn't forget the question just now and looked at her seriously. Back to the topic. Do you have something on your mind recently? Chu Qingyan felt a little uneasy when she saw how serious he was. Something on my mind? It shouldn't be considered that. But now I have a question. Oh, let's hear it. He was still a little worried that the little fellow wouldn't answer him. Now that she had spoken, he couldn't help but be interested. Chapter 596. Chu Qingyan faced the sunlight and it was a bit dazzling. She didn't know if it was because of the sunlight or because of the noble and threatening man in front of her, but there was a question in her heart right now. It was something that she had always hidden in her heart. It was something that she had never cared about before, but now it was becoming clearer and clearer. It was something that Nian Nian didn't dare to say. She didn't know if it was because the sunlight around them was too warm, or if it was because their hearts were too close, but she opened her mouth, wanting to be brave and open her mouth for him to see the problem. But bravery needed to be done in one go. But when she saw Hua Ling walking behind him, she gave up on that idea and her courage disappeared. She tilted her head and forced out a smile. When are we leaving? I'm about to die from exhaustion. Xiao Su originally thought that she would ask some serious questions, so he was waiting for her. Unfortunately, he got such a complaint. He was stunned at first, but then he smiled helplessly. Hold on for a bit longer, at most 2 hours. He spoke like he was coaxing a child, smiling as he spoke to her. When these words came out, the two of them were a bit dazed. It seemed like this scene hadn't appeared between the two of them in a long time. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips into a smile and heavily nodded. Then I'll hold on for a bit longer. If I can't hold on, you have to carry me. If you really can't take a single hit, I don't mind you losing face. Xiao Su raised a brow as he looked at her. Then he turned around when Hua Ling called out to him. Chu Qingyan bared her fangs at his back. Was there a need to laugh at her like this? Xiao Su happened to turn around and her face froze in midair. He chuckled. You really are a child. Chu Qingyan crossed her arms as she angrily looked at his back. She was already 15. 15. In ancient times, this age could already be considered a steamed bun. She wasn't a child. After resting for a bit, the group continued forward. After resting, Chu Qingyan had already recovered her strength. She fell behind at this time and followed the group with light steps. She raised her head and looked at the elegant person walking in front of her. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly. Actually, it was no longer important whether she asked that question or not. To her, the most precious thing was the days she spent with him. Why did she have to get to the bottom of it? If that day really came, then there would be so many memories left. It was precisely because humans had been living in groundless worries and self-worries that they would always fear the future and everything that existed in their fantasies. Regardless of whether Big Ice Cube treated her as his daughter or his younger sister, he would only treat her well. As long as it was Wei, she should not be stubborn. It was God's mercy that allowed her to meet such an outstanding person who should have lived in a different world from her. What else could she be dissatisfied with? With that thought in mind, Chu Qingyan quickened her steps and walked beside Xiao Su, shoulder to shoulder with him. Cherishing the present and living in the present was the most important thing. 2 hours later, the group stopped at the foot of a snow-covered mountain. There's no path. Where's the entrance? Hua Ling turned to look at the brawny man, his face full of doubt. Wait a moment. The brawny man gestured to the people in the snow mountain. They nodded and then walked forward to dig up the snow in front of them. Gradually, a stone door appeared. The patterns on the stone door were very complicated and they could faintly see a few numbers on it. One of them raised his hand and did something and the stone door slowly opened. The mechanism set by the wood spirit cannot be activated without a password. Xiao Su explained to the surprised Chu Qingyan beside him. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan finally understood. No wonder she felt that this door looked familiar. A few years ago, she had asked the wood spirit what kind of door could not be cracked by ordinary people. She had casually described modern security doors and password-protected doors to him. She did not expect that after 4 years, she would actually see it with her own eyes and be able to design it just based on her description. She had to admit that the wood spirit was really a genius. After the door opened, the brawny man led the way in front. Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan followed behind him. Hua Ling, Turin, and Jean Xian protected each other on the left and right. The group stepped into the corridor. The door behind them slowly closed and candlelight filled their eyes. Chu Qingyan looked at the long tunnel and recalled the time when she had been kidnapped and almost lost her life in the fire. She turned to Jean Xian, who was deep in thought, and asked, "Do you feel a sense of déjà vu?" Jean Xian nodded when he heard this. "It's still vivid in my mind." She faintly smiled and slowly walked forward. At that time, she finally understood how torturous it was to wait for someone and how pleasantly surprised it was for that person to appear. Chu Qingyan raised her head to look at the person beside her. If it wasn't for him saving her several times, even if she carried the light of transmigration, she wouldn't have 9 lives to squander. She also wouldn't have taken in a loyal subordinate like Jean Xian. Back then, she had some reservations about him, but after being with him for 4 to 5 years, Jean Xian didn't disappoint her. Although he still couldn't remember the past, he was already able to become her left and right hand. Be careful. As soon as his voice fell, Chu Qingyan felt a hand pull her wrist up slightly. With this reminder, she didn't trip on the stairs. Chu Qingyan blushed with shame. She had actually been distracted. Xiao Su let go of her hand and felt a little helpless. She could even choke on drinking water and trip on walking. Towards her, he already couldn't say anything more. Feeling the big ice cube's disdain for her, Chu Qingyan's face slightly heated up. She forced herself to abandon those distracting thoughts and walk properly. Step by step, she walked up the stairs. When she reached the last step, her vision suddenly opened up. Clang, 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 clang. The sound of hammering iron went from vague to clear. Chu Qingyan looked around. Hundreds of blacksmiths were shuttling back and forth. The furnaces were lit one by one. Everything was neat and orderly. There wasn't any chaos. She raised her head and found that this place was at least 100 feet high. Then, floor by floor, they went up in a circular shape. From above, she could vaguely hear the sound of hammering iron. It was just that compared to the sound below, it was more spacious and ethereal. Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. This was simply a large-scale smithing factory. And a person in a blue brocade robe had been waiting respectfully for a long time. When he saw Xiao Su's group, he immediately went up to greet them. Lu Yu greets your highness. Chu Qingyan looked at him. His skin was a bit dark and he wasn't tall. But his eyebrows were straight and he looked like a strict person. Sometimes, judging a person by their appearance was quite accurate. At this time, not long after Chu Qingyan's group entered the mountain range, a group of people quickly climbed up the snowy peak. Master, this subordinate clearly saw over a dozen people enter the Fuli mountain range, but now there's no sign of them. Qing Feng's face was filled with doubt. Xiao Su's people are very secretive, so they won't leave any traces. But if you can't find them, it means there is a secret passage here. Split up and look for them. Pang Huang swept his eyes over the wide snowy ground and gave the order in a deep voice. Yes. The more hidden it was, the more suspicious it would be. Fuli mountain range, what kind of secret did it have? It really made people curious. Chapter 597. Mr. Lu, thank you for your hard work. Xiao Su looked at the loyal subordinate in front of him and nodded in return. This is what this one should do. Your Highness, this way please. This one will show you the new batch of weapons. Lu Yu stepped back and made way, then raised his hand in invitation. Xiao Su nodded and led the group forward. Chu Qingyan nodded inwardly. This Lu Yu was a practical person. He didn't exchange any pleasantries and went straight to business. She had to say that it was a wise decision for the Ice Cube to choose him to take on this heavy responsibility. After passing through the central hall, they went straight to another stone door. Using a similar method to open it, the group walked into a room. To be exact, it was an armory. This was the first time Chu Qingyan saw so many weapons on display. There were several times more weapons than the armory in Lian City. Your Highness, this is the weapon that this one made from the newly discovered ore. Please take a look. After Lu Yu finished speaking, he turned around and picked up a large knife, placing it flat in his hand in front of him. Xiao Su took the large knife and weighed it in his hand. It was lighter than the weapons he usually saw. Although the difference wasn't big, for soldiers who had been in combat for a long time, it was already a lot lighter. Your Highness, you can try its sharpness, Lu Yu said with a smile. The most satisfying thing about a weapon made from this ore was its weight and lethality. Xiao Su nodded and turned to wave at the people who were sizing him up. Come here. Chu Qingyan pointed at herself in confusion. After confirming that he was calling her, she walked over in confusion. What's the matter? Give me a strand of your hair. Xiao Su reached out to her. The corner of Chu Qingyan's mouth twitched. If they were in another place, she would think that the person in front of her was teasing her. However, at this moment, he was speaking in a serious manner. Everyone around them was looking at them curiously, which made Chu Qingyan's scalp tighten. You have it yourself. Lu Yu had never seen Chu Qingyan before, so he didn't know who the young man wearing a silver mask was. He only felt that he didn't even dare to breathe loudly in front of His Highness. This young man actually dared to talk back to His Highness. He didn't know whether he should admire his courage or admire his courage or admire his courage. However, Hua Ling, Turin, and the others were already used to this scene. In their minds, only the little princess consort dared to contradict their master like this. It could only be her. Therefore, they were happy to see this public display of affection. Xiao Su was not angered by her words. He spoke again, stop dawdling. Chu Qingyan rolled her eyes. He really did have her. However, with so many people waiting for her, she could only obediently pluck out a strand of hair and hand it to him with teary eyes. Xiao Su took it and glanced at her. There was a smile in his eyes before he started to work. Everyone's eyes landed on Xiao Su's hand. They saw him hold the large blade horizontally and then slowly place the strand of hair he had just taken out on the blade. Even the depressed Chu Qingyan was attracted by his actions. She blinked and looked at him seriously. Her long hair landed on the blade, and then a miracle happened. Her hair was cut off just like that. It was cut off. Is this the legendary divine weapon that can snap hair with a blow? Chu Qingyan exclaimed. The tense atmosphere was dispersed by her exclamation. Lu Yu said with a smile, it can't be called a divine weapon, but it can be said to be the best combat weapon our Sichuan has to date. Xiao Su also looked at the person beside him with a smile on his face. Chu Qingyan touched her head. She seemed to have been teased by the big ice cube again. How many have been forged so far? Xiao Su handed the blade to Turin, then turned to take the cloth towel from his subordinate and asked while wiping his hands. Lu Yu immediately reported, so far, only 37 large blades, 25 long swords, and 50 long arrows have been forged. Too little, not enough. Xiao Su frowned slightly. This weapon could be compared to 3 or 4 weapons, but the number produced was too small. If there was only so much, it would not be of much use at all. Lu Yu explained, Your Highness, this type of ore is relatively rare. We have only found a little so far, and we have used up a lot of it for research. We can only refine this much with the remaining ore. However, we found similar ore in another mountain range yesterday. If we can confirm it, the ore we mined is enough to refine thousands of weapons. Xiao Su nodded. That's good. How much of the rest of the ore have been forged? Lu Yu answered all the questions with a very humble attitude. Chu Qingyan stood not far away and looked at the two of them. Her lips curled up slightly. For the past 2 years, Big Ice Cube had been building roads and rebuilding city walls in Lian City. He knew how to use people well and treated the people like his own children, attracting many people to join him. Also, because he did not set any requirements and did not care about family background, many talents appeared around him. Lu Yu was one of them. He had been blacksmithing for generations and was a famous blacksmith. After some inspection, Big Ice Cube put him at ease and placed him in the Fuli mountain range. Lu Yu did not let Big Ice Cube down. In the first year, he produced at least 1,000 weapons. Seeing that Big Ice Cube and Lu Yu still had other things to discuss, Chu Qingyan brought Jin Xen to wander around. Then, they walked up the stairs one by one until they saw a door. Where does this door lead to? Chu Qingyan asked the guard. This is an emergency passage. It can lead to the outside. The guard replied. Chu Qingyan nodded. This was the emergency passage that she had told the wood spirit before. She said to the guard, Open the door. I'll go out and take a look. The guard nodded and turned around to press the secret button. He then opened the stone door and let Chu Qingyan out. The sun was shining brightly outside. Chu Qingyan felt the sunlight and did not want to go in again. She took Jin Xian out of the stone door and asked the guard to close the door. She was ready to walk around. Jin Xian, have you not remembered your past? At this point, Chu Qingyan was no longer asking him this question with the intention of prying. She was sincerely hoping that he could recall the past. After all, a person had lived for 15 years, and 10 years of his memories were blank. Every time he tried to recall the past, it was such a sad thing. This subordinate tried my best, but my head seemed to be blocked by something and I was unable to recall the past. Whenever a fragment flashed by, my head would hurt, so this subordinate didn't plan on recalling it. Let nature take its course. Also, it's quite good to stay by master's side. Hearing his master ask about it after such a long time, Jinxin felt that he had let go of the past. Chu Qingyan sighed. It's good that you can think this way. Nothing can be forced. Perhaps you will remember when it's time to remember. Jin Xian nodded. The two slowly walked towards the mountain peak, intending to walk to the top to take a look. At this moment, Jin Xian suddenly lowered his body and stretched out his hand to touch the snow. He then said to the person not far in front of him with a serious expression, Master, I found something. Chapter 598. Chu Qingyan was looking into the distance. When she heard Jin Xian calling her so seriously, she immediately walked over. What's wrong? She asked as soon as she walked over. Mistress, look. Jin Xian pointed to the ground. Chu Qingyan looked in the direction he was pointing at and saw 2 clear footprints. She then looked around and realized that the footprints started at the bottom of the mountain and extended diagonally to the right. When she looked at them carefully, the footprints on the snow were very obvious under the sunlight. From the looks of it, it was just recently passed by. Chu Qingyan took 2 glances and judged. Then what should we do next? Should we go back and report to His Highness? Jin Xian asked. They shouldn't have gone far. You go back and report. I'll go and track them. Chu Qingyan immediately ordered. Mistress, it's better for this subordinate to go and track them. It's safer for you to go back. Jin Xen shook his head. Chu Qingyan looked at him with a smile. Looking at their footprints, they're not my match. If we delay any longer, I'm afraid they'll go far away. Jin Xen looked at his mistress. Indeed, his mistress's skills had improved a lot in the past 2 years. Even he could barely fight her to a draw. So he nodded and signaled her to be careful. Then he quickly left. Chu Qingyan looked in the direction that Jin Xen left and stopped smiling. Then she followed the footprints and followed. She had just climbed up the snow peak when she saw 2 black figures searching around. They seemed to be looking for something. She immediately hid her tracks and followed behind them. We still haven't found the entrance. One of the black-clothed men said to his companion beside him. This place is so big. Be patient. His Highness is still waiting for us to report back. The other black-clothed man replied. The 2 of them planned to go back home. But when they turned around, they saw the silver-masked red-clothed youth standing in front of them. The 2 of them instantly pulled out their swords. One of them asked, Who are you? Are you from this mountain range? Should I be the one asking you? Where did you come from? Why are you here? What do you plan to do? Chu Qingyan looked at them coldly. You talk big. Come and die first. The 2 of them glanced at each other and immediately flanked Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan tilted her body and dodged an attack. She reached out and grabbed one of the men's arms. Then she twisted her body and snatched the man's sword. She lifted her leg and kicked the man, sending him flying into the snow. Then she swung her sword and started fighting with the other man. The last person was subdued by her. Chu Qingyan placed the sword on his neck and pressed it down, causing him to half kneel on the ground. Chu Qingyan did not waste any time and said directly, Don't make me repeat the question just now. You want to know who we are? Dream on. That person laughed coldly, and then black blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. Chu Qingyan frowned and took poison to commit suicide. She stood up and looked at the other person, who had also committed suicide. It seemed that the clues had been cut off. At this moment, her eyes narrowed. She immediately stepped lightly on the snow and jumped away. She saw that just as she left her feet, a long arrow appeared on the ground where she was standing. When she turned in midair, she saw a man dressed in black holding a long bow and pointing it in her direction. Behind him, there were more than 10 men in black holding bows and arrows. That man kept his bow and made a gesture. The people behind him pulled their bows and arrows. Before she could stand firm, arrows flew towards her one after another. Chu Qingyan waved the sword in her hand and dodged those arrows. In less than the time it took to drink a cup of tea, her body was filled with arrows. Seeing that the other party did not seem to want to give up, Chu Qingyan narrowed her eyes and flew towards the archer, stepping on an arrow. Because the distance was too close, the bows and arrows could not be used. So, the men in black all pulled out their swords and slashed at Chu Qingyan. Chu Qingyan landed in the middle of the group of black-robed men and started fighting with them. These people did not come with good intentions. Chu Qingyan did not show mercy and killed with every move. Pang Huang was originally standing at the side to observe the youth. But as the fight became more intense, his people were injured. His face did not look good. He pulled out the sword at his waist and joined the battle. Chu Qingyan was originally more than enough to deal with these men in black, but the sudden addition of the leader of the men in black made the situation one-sided. Suddenly, the sword in her hand that she took from the men in black was broken by the man in front of her. Chu Qingyan took a few steps back and steadied herself to face the man in front of her. Pang Huang looked at her and said in a threatening tone, "This youth, if you surrender now, I can spare your life." "Spare my life, then what?" Chu Qingyan felt that this person's voice was vaguely familiar. But the person in front of her was wearing a black brocade robe and his face was covered with a black cloth. Only a pair of deep blue eyes could be seen. Wait, blue eyes? She suddenly remembered the person she saw by the stream. She immediately connected the two together. Sure enough, this person approached the Fuli mountain range with a purpose. "You killed 2 of my men. You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment." Pang Huang's voice fell. The archers were ready again and the tips of the arrows were aimed at her. Chu Qingyan heard this and smiled. Her tone was full of innocence. Your men committed suicide. It has nothing to do with me. They can only blame themselves for being too weak. Qing Feng went up to check and confirmed that it was a suicide. But to be able to force a death warrior to commit suicide, it could only be when they had to die. This person was very cunning. He spoke unhurriedly, like a fox. Pang Huang couldn't help but think of the woman he had met that night by the stream. However, the person in front of him was a man, and his voice didn't sound like one. You didn't kill Boren, but Boren died because of you. So you can't escape the responsibility. Pang Huang raised his eyebrows and looked at her. If you want to condemn someone, you can always find a pretext. Chu Qingyan shrugged. At this time, she pretended to be relaxed. In fact, she had a plan. Jean Xen had been gone for a while, so he should be back soon. She just needed to stall for time. Pang Huang looked at the young man in front of him. He was obviously at a disadvantage, but he still had an air of arrogance that refused to admit defeat. Moreover, his martial arts were strong, not weaker than the bodyguards beside him. There was a hint of admiration in his eyes. Whose subordinate are you? If you don't have a sect or master, you can rely on me. Chu Qingyan was slightly surprised. In just a moment, it became a recruitment. She looked at him provocatively. Benefits? Seeing her contemptuous tone, Qing Feng immediately said to His Highness, why waste time with her? Just take her back. Pang Huang raised his hand and stopped his subordinate's words. Although he was now the crown prince of a country, he still lacked many capable people by his side. So one of his goals in coming to Sichuan this time was to recruit talents. Moreover, the person in front of him was surprisingly to his liking. So he wanted to make this person follow him willingly. If it was not possible, then he could only use force. I guarantee that you will not have to worry about food and clothing for the rest of your life. You will enjoy endless glory, splendor, and wealth. Pang Huang said confidently. Chu Qingyan heard this and laughed. Pang Huang's smile froze on his face. Chapter 599. What's so funny? My master is so sincere in asking you to surrender, don't be ungrateful. Qing Feng gripped the hilt of his sword as he looked at the young but courageous youth in front of him in annoyance. Who are you? Where are you from and what abilities do you have? Chu Qingyan calmly asked. It would be best if she could figure out this person's identity. She wondered if he would come up with the name Long Guang Huang or Pang Hua Huang. These questions, as long as you surrender, you will know in the future. Pang Huang's tone was a little bad as he stared at her with a burning gaze. Chu Qingyan smiled and shook her head. Looking at Pang Huang's ugly expression, she tilted her head and giggled. I can also guarantee you a lifetime of food and clothing, endless glory and wealth. Why don't you consider following me? Pang Huang was slightly taken aback. This was the first time someone had the guts to say such words to him in front of his face. Even his father, the emperor, did not dare to say such words to him, guaranteeing him a carefree life and endless wealth. He knew that she was joking. It was just that on this snowy ground, the red-clothed, black-haired, silver-masked youth was standing on top of it and saying such words with a smile, causing him to be dazed for a moment. Your courage is not small. Coming back to his senses, Pang Huang's expression became even uglier. This was a naked humiliation. No one dared to challenge his authority in front of him. What? I'm just telling the truth. With her status, it was not a problem to guarantee a person's food and clothing. Glory and wealth? She casually threw him to the big ice cube and he would become a qualified official in minutes. Then she would throw him to some corner and let him become rich. Wouldn't it be solved? Pang Huang did not want to waste any more words with her. If he was not careful, he would be discovered. It was very easy to make the person in front of him surrender. He just had to capture him and grind his spirit. He was not afraid of disobedience. Chu Qingyan also felt the other party's impatience. Estimating that it was about time, she placed her right hand on her waist, waiting for the other party to make the first move. Capture him. Pang Huang directly ordered. Chu Qingyan coldly snorted. Her right hand moved, and the silvery white software appeared in her hand. This was her real weapon. Pang Huang didn't expect her to still resist. He raised his sword and aimed it at her. Just as he was about to personally grab her, he suddenly heard the youth in front of him murmur with a hint of joy, "She's here." He looked at her in surprise, not because of her words, but because of her tone. It was an indescribable feeling, as if he had seen a light in the darkness, as well as a certainty. At this moment, Qing Feng whispered into his ear in a panic, "Master, someone is coming. We're about to be surrounded." At this time, Pang Huang turned around and looked at the people behind him. There were dozens of people. So many people, but they were only discovered at this time. It seemed that their martial arts were not weak. He turned his head and looked at the young man in front of him again. "You are Xiao Su's man?" "Guess." Although they had already arrived, but now was not the time to let down her guard. Chu Qingyan was on guard, but her tone was still incomparably relaxed. Pang Huang estimated the distance and instantly reached out to grab Chu Qingyan's shoulder. No matter what, he wanted this person. Whether it was the heart of cherishing talent, or the fact that this person was Xiao Su's subordinate, it was all beneficial to him. Although Chu Qingyan didn't expect that he would dare to make a move on her at this time, she was already prepared. She brandished her sword to block. This person seemed to have seen through her thoughts. The sword in his hand suppressed her sword move, and his other hand was already free to grab her again. But at this time, a sharp sound pierced through the air towards the two people. Pang Huang sensed it and could only give up the shoulder that he was about to grab. Using his qi, he retreated a few steps, and then looked in the direction of the arrow. A black figure wearing a veil hat stood on top of the snowy peak, holding a bow and arrow in his hand. His posture was cold and severe as he looked in their direction. "Xiao Su?" This person standing at the peak, but giving off an invisible pressure. Pang Huang combined this scene and these two words appeared in his mind. He really was worthy of being Sichuan's war god. That arrow had brushed past the two of them. If he didn't control it well, he would have hurt his own people. If he didn't care about this silver-masked youth, then he was confident in his archery skills. Pang Huang believed that it should be the latter. But Pang Huang did not forget to poach her. "You can see that your master doesn't care about your life or death. If that arrow was a bit careless, you would have already lost your life. Why follow this cold-blooded master? How about you come with me? There won't be a bit of carelessness, so you should just give up." Chu Qingyan raised her sword and blocked them from leaving. As soon as her words fell, she charged at them. Pang Huang gave a cold snort and ordered his subordinates to not fight. He then immediately headed down the mountain. Chu Qingyan was pushed back a few steps by his sword, and in a flash, she had already put some distance between herself and Jiang. It had to be said, these people's qinggong was first class. Hua Ling and the others immediately chased after her. When Chu Qingyan wanted to chase after them, she was blocked by someone. Chu Qingyan raised her head and saw that it was Big Ice Block. When she wanted to tell him about her discovery, she heard him speak in a strict voice. "Leave it to Hua Ling and the others. You should take care of yourself first." His tone was rarely serious. Chu Qingyan felt a bit wronged. She was just doing her job, so why was she being scolded by him? She strangely felt uncomfortable in her heart, but she wanted to get angry at him, but he ignored her and said something to Turin. She turned her head and wanted to leave, but after taking a few steps, her wrist was grabbed. She unconsciously wanted to throw it away, but she heard his helpless voice. "Why are you walking so fast? Take care of your wound first before you get angry." She was a bit stunned, but her hand was already raised by him. At this time, she found that the back of her hand had been cut at an unknown time and it was currently bleeding. Then she saw the person in front of her, lowering his head to take care of her wound. She immediately felt a bit of regret. "I'm not angry." "And you're not angry right now." Xiao Su first cleaned her wound and prepared to apply medicine. Chu Qingyan's face turned hot. "I wasn't angry just now either." Don't move around." Xiao Su smiled. Chu Qingyan finally became obedient. "Who gave you the courage to face the enemy alone?" Xiao Su wrapped the gauze and then began to teach her a lesson. At this time, Chu Qingyan was already very obedient, answering all his questions. "At that time, I only found 2 sets of footprints and thought there were 2 people, so..." "You thought?" Xiao Su's tone became strict again. Do you know that guessing is a taboo in the military? Chu Qingyan admitted defeat. I know I was wrong. Don't keep lecturing me like I'm a child. Xiao Su smiled. In his eyes, she was still a child. Tell me, what did you find at the cost of your injury? Xiao Su changed the topic, so that the little fellow wouldn't say that he was always bullying her. Chapter 600. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan nodded and said, The leader is the one who ambushed me at the river. I think he came prepared for the Fuli mountain range's ores. Xiao Su's expression turned serious. We have to finish mining the ore as soon as possible and strengthen the guards. Otherwise, we will be discovered soon. I will send more people to assist Luyu. Chu Qingyan agreed. This was the only thing they could do now. Everyone knew that if the secret of the ore was leaked, then the ice cube would be attacked from all sides. Regardless of whether it was the West Xian Emperor or the other countries, who would look at this fat piece of meat in front of them and not eat it. Big Ice would also be accused of not reporting and plotting a rebellion. At that time, the gains would not make up for the losses. In the end, it would become someone else's wedding dress. Regardless of whether these men in black found out anything, it was always better to be careful. Then what do we do next? Chu Qingyan asked. Xiao Su turned to look at the endless mountain range and slowly said, I think that if these people have done it once, there will be a second time. So we will stay here for 3 days. If those people attack again, it would be best if we can catch them all in one fell swoop. Night fell and the temperature in the mountain range was very low. Chu Qingyan brought people to patrol the mountain range. This was the first time she walked in a snowy night. The moonlight poured down on the snowy ground, refracting the light as if it was glowing. It was very beautiful, but at the same time, it was also very desolate and very frightening. This was because one could faintly hear the wolf howls resounding through the valley, as if they were counting down, one sound after another. Little young master, there are wolves in the Fuli mountain range. We have to be careful when we travel. The burly man reminded. Chu Qingyan nodded. Wolves might be solitary animals, but whenever they encountered danger, they would appear in packs. Hence, they had to be careful and avoid these ferocious animals. Chu Qingyan was looking into the distance when she suddenly heard the greetings of the burly man and the others. She turned her head and saw the person walking towards her under the moonlight. Perhaps he disliked the gauze hat, which was a bit of a hindrance in the windy mountain, so he put on his mask again. It was also silver but one size bigger than hers. Weren't you discussing the next step of the plan with Luyu? Why are you here? Chu Qingyan approached him and asked in confusion. Xiao Su saw her shrinking her neck and shivering. He habitually took off his cloak and draped it over her shoulders. Let's go for a walk. He wouldn't tell her that he couldn't find her after the meeting, so he came out to look for her because he was worried. He wasn't used to explaining, and he didn't feel the need to. Chu Qingyan was embarrassed. She had brought her own cloak. Why did Big Ice Cube like to put his cloak on top of hers? It was very heavy. Xiao Su didn't pay attention to her expression. He turned around and said to the burly men, You guys split up and search. So the burly men and the others all looked like they didn't see anything. Please continue, Master and Little Princess Consort, and then left with light steps. Leave everything to Xiao Liechi and the others. You don't have to be so tense. Xiao Su's gaze swept over the back of her injured hand, and then he said in a calm voice. Hearing this, Chu Qingyan paused. But if I don't do this, what can I help you share? She almost unconsciously blurted it out, but after she said it, she regretted it. She said it as if he was the center and she didn't have her own opinions. But in the beginning, whether it was practicing martial arts, learning the art of war, or trying to figure out people's hearts, it was all because she wanted to be close to him and share all of his worries. But now, because Big Ice Cube's reputation was growing in Lian City, more and more people were coming to him. There were also more and more people with specialties. Looking back at herself, she didn't seem to be of much use anymore. As she thought about this, Chu Qingyan felt very lost. She also felt a little defeated and upset. There's no need to share. Xiao Liechi and the others aren't freeloaders. You just have to stay by my side. That's enough. Xiao Su thought. But I'm not freeloading either. Chu Qingyan was a bit depressed. Was she really useless? She strongly denied it. Xiao Su revealed a rare smile. I know you're not freeloading. You like to eat sweet and sour dishes. Chu Qingyan's depression was blown away by his teasing. She couldn't help but roll her eyes at him in amusement. Xiao Su curled his lips and then suggested, "Let's walk?" She nodded. Soon, they arrived at a small lake at the bottom of the mountain range. The mountain was quiet, and the wind was rustling. Chu Qingyan stepped on a withered leaf, and then another withered leaf. Her expression relaxed. She turned to look at the people behind her, and raised her eyebrows with a smile. "Big Ice Cube, it seems like we haven't been so relaxed in so many years." Hearing this, Xiao Su started to reflect on himself. It seemed that ever since he went to Lian City, he had been busy with government affairs, and the time he spent with the little one could be counted on his fingers. In the past, he had promised her to be happy, safe, and worry-free, but it seemed that he didn't give her such a stable life. But she never complained. "You want to go to Jiangnan?" Chu Qingyan's foot that was stepping on the leaf tilted, and she looked at the person behind her in surprise. "How did you know?" The person behind her just looked at her with his hands behind his back, and he didn't answer. But his eyes were full of smiles, and it was a kind of certainty. She touched her nose. "I want to go to Jiangnan, but the main point isn't to have fun. I heard that many heroes and scholars came from there, and I want to take a look. Also, I want to do business as a kind of experience. What do you think?" She didn't say that she wanted to earn money for him to use in the future. She felt that no matter what she said, it would hurt a man's face. So she directly said that she wanted to have fun and experience. Xiao Su stopped in his tracks, and his eyes looked deeply at the young girl standing in front of him, whose height was less than his chin. She couldn't understand the complex emotions in his eyes. Finally, she heard him say, "After leaving Fuli Mountain Range this time, we'll go to Jiangnan." Chu Qingyan thought that she was hearing things, and when she came back to her senses, she was wild with joy. "Okay." Xiao Su looked at her cheerful appearance, and the snow-white light reflected into his eyes, bringing with it a dazzling brilliance. Since she wanted to do it, he would let her do it. Life was so short, and he would do his best to fulfill whatever she wanted. A man's face? What was that? Could it be eaten? Just as the two of them were talking and laughing by the lake, there was a sudden explosion, and the whole ground shook. After Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su steadied themselves, a hint of seriousness appeared on their faces. Let's go back," Xiao Su immediately said. Chu Qingyan didn't hesitate and immediately followed him. What exactly happened to cause such a big commotion? Chapter 601. The two of them gathered their internal energy, stepped on the mountain rocks, and quickly headed towards the place where the accident happened. Before they had gone far, they saw Turin and the others coming towards them. "Master, someone blew up our mountain range with explosives." Turin didn't dare to stay any longer and immediately reported. The group didn't stop walking and reported as they walked. "How's the damage?" Xiao Su asked with a gloomy face. There was an avalanche in the first mountain range. 4 or 5 patrolling brothers happened to pass by and were trapped. "I've already sent people to search for them." Those people were all his subordinates. Turin's tone was a little impatient. Xiao Su nodded. "What about the other mountains?" "No abnormalities have been found so far." As soon as Turin finished speaking, another explosion resounded through the sky. The whole ground shook, and the mountain range in front of them was also affected. Rocks rolled down. Xiao Su and the others nimbly avoided the falling snow and rocks. Chu Qingyan's face was a little pale. Did these people come up with this plan because they couldn't find the secret of the mountain range? They wanted to blow up the mountain range. Then, they would be able to pry open the cocoon and see what was inside. It was too scary. This kind of explosion was challenging nature. If they were careless, they would lose their own people. It was a test for both sides. Hearing this, Xiao Su ordered Turin in a deep voice, "Immediately send people to search. Find them before they continue." After blowing up 2 mountains, they wouldn't give up so easily. So, he had to stop them before they did. Everyone's atmosphere suddenly became serious. Big ice block, we can't go on like this. She also wanted to lead a team to search. If they acted separately, they could increase the intensity of the search. However, Xiao Su seemed to have seen through her thoughts. When she opened her mouth, he said, "Don't go anywhere. Follow me closely." At this time, she couldn't leave his side. The two tremors just now had caused an avalanche. It was hard to guarantee that these people would be even crazier. When the snow mountain collapsed, she wouldn't be by his side, and he wouldn't be able to help. Chu Qingyan could only agree to big ice cubes' overbearingness. When the mountain range exploded for the third time, Turin and the others came to report that they had found traces of the enemy. They were at the foot of the fifth mountain range not far ahead. Chu Qingyan and Xiao Su looked at each other and immediately rushed over. Coincidentally, when they arrived, the group of people was about to ignite the fourth bomb. "I didn't expect you guys to be so fast." Pang Huang turned around and looked in the direction where Xiao Su and the others had come from, smiling ambiguously. "I'm not as fast as you guys." Xiao Su stood not far from them with his men and looked at Pang Huang's group with slight annoyance. "Thank you for letting me win." Pang Huang pretended to be humble. Then he asked with obvious curiosity, "His Royal Highness, I'm very curious. What is it here that makes you so nervous?" Xiao Su glanced at him coldly. "Fuli Mountain Range is this king's fief. It is this king's responsibility to maintain the safety of this fief. Moreover, this king has the right to arrest any evildoer who violates this fief, even if you are from another country. His Royal Highness is right. However, you still haven't explained why you are so nervous. I heard that there are ores in this mountain range. I don't know if it's true or not. I'm very curious. Can His Royal Highness enlighten me?" Pang Huang asked calmly. "What qualifications do you have to know?" Xiao Su looked at him coldly. Pang Huang's expression changed slightly at his impoliteness. It was as if he didn't put him in his eyes at all. He also restrained the smile on his face and said meaningfully, "Xiao Su, don't forget that the person who can flatten this mountain range is me. The initiative is in my hands. If you don't cooperate, then I can only say sorry." Chu Qingyan frowned. This person was simply a scoundrel. If you can't get it, then destroy it. Could it be that the Prince of Nansong usually does things like this? If the people of Southern Blue knew that you used such despicable methods to force people to submit in another country, would they admire you a bit more or would their image be ruined? Xiao Su's tone was indifferent, but it was enough to make the other party turn pale with fright. Pang Huang's eyes were filled with astonishment. He had clearly concealed his identity well. How did Xiao Su suddenly see through him? Suddenly, he remembered the crafty woman he met by the stream that day. In other countries, there are very few people with the surname Long. However, I have heard of Long Guangsheng's surname Pang. If that woman was Xiao Su's subordinate, then it was normal for his identity to be exposed. With the fierce wind cavalry's ability, it wasn't difficult to investigate a person. However, he didn't admit or deny it. He met Xiao Su's gaze and laughed eerily. "Xiao Su, provocation is useless against me. Now, there are explosives buried under this mountain range. If you dare to act blindly without thinking, then..." Pang Huang replaced the rest of his words with a cold smile, but it was full of threats. When Pang Huang finished speaking, Chu Qingyan subconsciously looked at the person beside her. From what she knew, the ice cube wasn't a person who could withstand threats. Pang Huang was simply plucking the hair from a tiger's head. However, the ice cube's reaction surprised Chu Qingyan. She only heard him say indifferently, "Your Highness Prince of Nansong, since you like this prince's mountain range so much, this prince is not a stingy person. If you want to play, then play. Otherwise, you will say that this prince didn't do his duty as a host. However, you have to be careful. Don't blow yourself up. Otherwise, you will lose more than you gain." Pang Huang originally thought that he would be angered, but he didn't expect him to say those words so calmly. It was as if he was looking at a clown. This made him feel angry. However, he quickly calmed down and looked at him with a cold gaze. "His Royal Highness, are you trying to loosen the reins only to grasp them better? Don't treat me as a brat who just came out." Xiao Su chuckled. It's up to you to believe it or not. Pang Huang fell silent because of his words. The two sides faced each other like this. Chu Qingyan knew that the ice cube was playing a psychological game with him. Before the ice cube took over the Fuli mountain range, it was just a few abandoned mountains. The talk about the ore was just a trick the Sichuan emperor wanted to trick him into coming here. Although the countries seemed peaceful on the surface, who didn't know that the Sichuan emperor was planning this? There were two reasons why Pang Huang chose to blow up the mountain. First, he wasn't sure what was inside the mountain range, so he wanted to see if he could expose what was inside by blowing it up. Second, he wanted to see if Xiao Su and the others would give themselves away when they blew up the mountain. This would help them find the secret of the Fuli mountain range. But right now, everything seemed to be out of his expectations. Xiao Su calmly allowed him to continue blowing up the mountain range. This made Pang Huang, who had made a solemn vow, unsure if he should continue blowing up the mountain range. Chu Qingyan watched the two sides in a deadlock, waiting for an opportunity to make a move. Chapter 602. Only a few moments had passed, but the people present felt as if a day had passed. Beneath Pang Huang's feet were a series of explosives. As long as they were ignited, the fourth mountain range would explode, causing a chain reaction that would affect the nearby mountains. Although they were under the control of others, Xiao Su and the others did not show any fear. Qing Feng whispered in his ear, "Your Highness, what should we do? The mountains in front of us have exploded, but we did not find any traces." Pang Huang raised his hand, indicating that he should not shut up. In fact, they didn't bring a lot of explosives. The reason why there was such a loud explosion in the first few mountains was because the mountain they chose was relatively low. Now, he asked people to gather all the explosives here just to test Xiao Su's reaction, but the result was disappointing. "Xiao Su." Pang Huang suddenly opened his mouth. Xiao Su only looked at him coldly. "I heard that you once challenged several generals of the enemy camp. Today, I want to see if you are really as powerful as the rumors say, or if you don't live up to your reputation. If you win, then I will retreat. If you lose, then you will hand over the secret of the Fuli mountain range." Pang Huang stared at him, word by word, not letting any of his actions go. "There are no secrets in the Fuli mountain range. I feel that Prince of Nansong, no matter if you win or lose, you will suffer a loss. Your Highness Prince of Nansong's intelligence is worrying." Chu Qingyan interrupted, shaking her head, expressing that she was speechless. Pang Huang snorted at Chu Qingyan's words, "Don't think that I will believe you." With that, Pang Huang unsheathed his sword. As soon as the sound of the sword rang out, he charged towards Xiao Su. Xiao Su's sword trembled as he met Pang Huang's attack. The two swords clashed in midair, and everyone felt a strong current of air forcing them to retreat. Sure enough, when the strong met the strong, the momentum was unstoppable. A hint of interest appeared in Xiao Su's eyes. It had been a long time since he had met an opponent of equal ability. After the confrontation, he did not restrain his inner force and directly released it, intending to fight to his heart's content. Pang Huang only used 70% of his strength, and found that his fingers could no longer hold the hilt of his sword. At this time, he immediately put away the thought of underestimating the enemy and went all out. As experts exchanged blows, Chu Qingyan felt that she could no longer see their moves clearly. She decided to give up and stared at Pang Huang's subordinates. At this time, there were two people holding torches and pointing them at the explosives on the ground. As long as there was something wrong, their torches would fall and the explosives would be ignited. At that time, there would definitely be an avalanche or a collapse. No matter what the result was, it was not something they wanted to see, because this mountain range had not started mining yet. If it was shaken open, as long as someone studied it carefully, it would not be difficult to find the ores inside. Hence, Chu Qingyan gave Turin a look. With years of tacit understanding, Turin immediately understood. While everyone was focused on the fight, the two of them quietly approached each other. When the time was right, the earth spirit turned around and pounced on one of them. It grabbed the hand of one of them, then quickly snatched the torch and threw it far away. As for Chu Qingyan, She kicked the gravel on the ground and hit the wrist of another person who was about to make a move. A second gravel followed and hit the torch, causing it to fly far away. In a blink of an eye, the opponent's torches were all gone. Pang Huang glanced behind him and his expression turned ugly. Xiao Su, your people did not follow the rules of the competition. When did this king accept your challenge? All is fair in war. Has your highness not learned this before? Xiao Su stabbed back at him, but the sword in his hand did not stop moving. Despicable! Pang Huang realized that he had been too careless. This person could not be judged with common sense and his moves were also very fierce. Just as Chu Qingyan and the others made their moves, Qing Feng and the others also started to fight back angrily. Hua Ling and the others protected in front of Chu Qingyan, resisting the black-clothed people. As for Chu Qingyan, she quickly destroyed the explosives to prevent any future problems. At this time, the sound of footsteps could be heard. Hua Ling had already brought people to surround everyone. Master, we are surrounded. Qing Feng, who was fighting, called out in a low voice. Pang Huang was distracted and Xiao Su's palm hit his life gate, hitting his chest. Pang Huang could not take it and his entire body flew out, slamming into the snow. He spat out a mouthful of blood that dyed the snow in front of him red. Master. Qing Feng rushed forward with a panicked expression and supported his master. The other black-clothed people all stopped fighting and surrounded Pang Huang, vigilantly looking at the fierce cavalry around them. Xiao Su put away his sword and slowly walked towards Pang Huang with Turan and the others, standing a certain distance away from Pang Huang. Prince of Nansong, you've lost. Xiao Su softly said. There was no joy from winning, like he was just informing him. Pang Huang's heart was heavily injured, but hearing Xiao Su's words, he revealed a smile. He had indeed lost. Whether it was strategy, heart, or martial arts, he was inferior to him. However, he had underestimated his opponent today, otherwise he would not have been in such a passive state. Xiao Su, from our exchange, you are a qualified opponent. I was too careless. Pang Huang slowly stood up. Because he had lost too much blood, his face was a bit pale. Xiao Su did not comment. Pang Huang's eyes swept over Chu Qingyan beside Xiao Su and a strange light flashed in his eyes. What a pity. I hope we will meet again. As soon as Pang Huang said this, Chu Qingyan immediately reacted. She was about to give the order to capture them, but the other side was faster than her. 3 smoke bombs exploded on the ground and white smoke billowed. At this time, they were at the entrance of the wind, so the white smoke quickly filled the air. When everyone dispersed the white smoke, Pang Huang and the others had already disappeared. There was only a trace of blood left on the ground. Master, should we chase? Hua Ling asked. Xiao Su raised his hand. No need. If the Prince of Nansong dies in Sichuan, it will definitely cause a dispute between the two countries. Then are we going to let him do as he pleases? After seriously injuring 4 of his subordinates, Turan's mood was a bit heavy. Of course we won't let him off so easily. The news of the Prince of Nansong's injury has been leaked to the other princes of Southern Song. What happens next will have nothing to do with us. Xiao Su glanced at the destroyed explosives on the ground and his eyes flashed with a trace of light. Injuring his people and wanting to return safely? It won't be that easy. Turan immediately accepted the order. The internal strife of Southern Song was no secret. Therefore, on this journey, the Prince of Nansong would be out of luck. Whether or not he could return alive was still unknown. Chu Qingyan nodded. The smartest thing in the world was to borrow a knife to kill someone and not get stained with blood. However, at this time, a fuse suddenly ignited in a hidden place. After leaving Fuli mountain range, Pang Huang looked back with a malicious gaze. The scarlet color at the corner of his mouth made him look like a demon. Xiao Su, don't you know that I like to be a crafty rabbit with 3 burrows the most? I wish you good luck. Chapter 603. After Turan and the others left first, the snow suddenly became empty. The rest of the people cleaned up the battlefield. Xiao Su glanced around and was ready to leave with Chu Qingyan. As soon as he took a step, Xiao Su frowned. What's that sound? Chu Qingyan hadn't recovered from the surprise of defeating the enemy just now. When she heard the big ice cube's suddenly vigilant tone, she immediately entered the state of preparing for battle. She held her breath and listened carefully. She listened for a while and didn't hear anything special. When she was about to ask him if he had misheard, suddenly a hissing sound came along with the wind. Chu Qingyan's face turned pale. There are explosives. Hide. Xiao Su reached out to grab her hand. But the little fellow was a few steps behind him. As soon as he finished speaking, the fuse was lit. Bang, bang, bang. There were explosions one after another. The whole ground was shaking. Xiao Su didn't have time to grab her hand. The two were separated because of the sudden rolling stones from the top of the mountain. The stones seemed to have been separated from the mountain and rolled down. Some were as small as sand, and some were as big as rolling balls. They rolled down the mountain at a fast speed. There's an avalanche. Leave quickly. Xiao Su roared. Chu Qingyan also understood that the power of the explosives this time was more powerful than the previous ones. Pang Huang put the explosives at the bottom of the mountain just to lure the enemy. He still had a trick up his sleeve. He wanted to kill them. How hateful! But now was not the time to pursue the matter. She dodged again and again at the foot of the mountain. She could dodge the water tank-sized stones, but she couldn't dodge them. She wanted to move forward, but she was blocked again and again. She had to retreat again and again. The stones were like drizzling rain. They were also very lethal. Although her clothes were thick, they still hurt her. Be careful! She suddenly heard the big ice cubes shout. Following his line of sight, she saw a big stone falling from the sky. She was shocked. She aimed at a direction and was ready to escape. Kacha, a rock the size of a fist hit her ankle, and the pain spread through her body like electricity. She couldn't take it anymore and fell to the ground. She was in so much pain that she had no strength left in her body. Even if she crawled, she wouldn't be able to avoid the falling rocks. Could it be that she could escape from the poisoning, ambushes, and assassinations, but she could not escape from the power of nature? The negative thoughts only flashed through her mind for a moment. She gritted her teeth and refused to give up. It was not that easy to make her admit defeat. Just as she was about to move with all her might, the boulder above her head was already right in front of her eyes. Suddenly, a figure flew over, picked her up, and rolled to the side. The two of them hugged each other and rolled far away. The place where they were just now had a big hole smashed by the mountain rocks. Chu Qingyan stared at the huge hole, still in shock. She couldn't imagine what would have happened if she had been the one lying in the hole just now. She came back to her senses and found that the person hugging her was the big ice cube. Because they were rolling on the ground without caring about their image, their clothes and hair were tangled together. Their breaths were close to each other, so close that if she raised her head, she would be able to touch his face. Her cheeks immediately flushed red again. We have to leave this place immediately. Xiao Su did not seem to notice their ambiguous position. He looked around and was ready to pull her up. But when he lowered his head, his eyes met with her slightly evasive gaze. Her red lips were so close to him, and her small ears were so red that it could drip blood. He suddenly felt a little dazed. Chu Qingyan, who did not dare to look at him directly, looked behind him. Then she was startled. When she saw the vast expanse of white above them, she immediately exclaimed, "Big ice cube, snow." Xiao Su was pulled back to his senses by her exclamation. He raised his head and saw the rumbling sound of the sea of snow rolling down. It was like the waves of the sea, surging and surging. There were also countless water tank-sized boulders mixed in with it, bringing with it a fierce aura. "Let's go," Xiao Su made a prompt decision. He carried the injured person with one hand and used the other to slash the obstacles with his sword. But no matter how fast they were, they could not compare to the speed of nature. Chu Qingyan only felt her vision turn black, and she did not know anything else. The last thing she remembered was the big ice cube's cold lower jaw and tightly pursed thin lips. When she woke up again, her mind was in a mess and she felt sore all over. When she saw her surroundings clearly, she was in a cave with a fire beside her. It was already nighttime. The clothes on her body were the big ice cube's outer clothes. Her ankle hurt, but it had already been bandaged and tied with the big ice cube's clothes. Her anxious heart immediately relaxed. It seemed like the big ice cube was with her. Then she was relieved. Big ice cube. She tried to call out to him. Rustle, rustle, rustle. It was a familiar set of footsteps, but it sounded much heavier than before. Chu Qingyan pursed her lips. The big ice cube should have suffered heavy injuries. But the people who walked into the cave, other than their pale faces, seemed to have no problems moving. The two of them were not wearing masks. They must have dropped them when they were escaping. How do you feel? Xiao Su looked at the person who had already woken up and asked softly. I'm fine. She shook her head and asked back, What about you? Are you hurt? The little fellow's undisguised concern made his lips curve. I'm fine too. He knew best whether she was fine or not. He had already checked her just now. They were all superficial wounds. Chu Qingyan frowned slightly. She remembered that before she fainted, there seemed to be a big rock flying towards the two of them. Big ice cube, how did we escape? Xiao Su sat down beside her and added some dry twigs into the fire. He said casually, We were buried under the snow. Maybe it was because we were lucky that we weren't buried too deeply. When I woke up, it was already dark. I dug you out and found a cave to settle you down. I've already sent out a signal, so Hualing and the others will come to find us. Chu Qingyan nodded. Suddenly, she smelled blood in the air and immediately turned to look at him. There's the smell of blood. Big ice cube, are you hurt? Xiao Su casually pointed at a dark corner not far away. We took its nest and killed it while we were at it. Chu Qingyan followed his line of sight and saw a dead black bear lying there. Her mouth twitched. If it wasn't for the darkness in the cave, she wouldn't have missed such a huge creature. But she had to admit that the big ice cube was really too powerful. He saved her and even killed a bear. Chu Qingyan was about to turn to talk to him when she felt a weight on her shoulder. She was stunned for a moment before she heard him say, I'm tired. Let me lean on you for a while. Chu Qingyan didn't dare to move after he said that. The person leaning against her back wrapped his arms around her and pressed his entire weight on her. Chapter 604. Chu Qingyan felt like there was a small mountain pressing down on her shoulders. But she did not dare move and allowed him to hold her in his embrace. Perhaps it was because of her stiffness that Xiao Su found it funny. He was already very tired at this time as he muttered, Relax, I won't eat you. Xiao Su did not know that his words made the person in his embrace even more tense. But he had already fallen asleep and his breathing had become long. This was the first time the two of them had hugged each other like this. Chu Qingyan felt her cheeks become slightly hot, but she did not hear him speak again. She couldn't help turning her head and looking at his closed eyes. His long and curly black eyelashes were like feathers that tickled her heart. She calmed her chaotic emotions and saw the exhaustion on the person's face as he rested his chin on her shoulder. Her heart couldn't help feeling pain. Today at the foot of the mountain, he had thrown himself at her without a care for himself. At that time she thought that he would die like this. He had saved her from danger, saved her from the avalanche, bandaged her wounds, and spared no effort in taking care of her. Her heart slowly began to warm up. Big ice cube. She seemed to be talking to herself and did not expect a reply from the person who was asleep. Thank you for taking care of me for all these years. Even if it's a little sister, it's already very good. She blinked and tears began to appear in her eyes like a rising tide. After her emotions calmed down, she planned on taking off the cloak on her body to cover him, but he tightly held on to her, as if he was afraid that she would leave. No matter how hard she tried, she could not move at all. In the end, she gave up. The only way was to move closer to him and transfer her body's warmth to him. At this time, the two young bodies were hugging each other without any charm. They just wanted the other to safely pass through this cold night. The fire was burning and she would add branches from time to time to ensure that it would not go out. In this snow mountain, if there was no fire to warm them up, they would quickly freeze to death in this cave. She forced herself to hold on for the entire night until the first rays of the morning sun appeared. Only then did she fall into a deep sleep. When Hualing and the others arrived, they saw this scene. The two outstanding men and women were leaning against each other. Although they were in a sorry state and the environment was bad, the scene was so beautiful that no one wanted to disturb them. Xiao Su slowly opened his eyes and saw several of his subordinates standing at the entrance of the cave. He nodded slightly and then looked at the person sleeping soundly in his arms. Only then did his tense expression relax a lot. He stood up and was about to carry her on his back, but after a moment of hesitation, he decided to carry her instead. When their master walked out of the cave, Hualing and the others bent over, planning on reporting what happened last night, but they were surprised to find that their master's back was stained with blood. It seemed like it had already dried up. "Master, are you injured? Why don't you hand the young master over to me?" Hualing's face was filled with worry. It seemed like his master's injuries were quite serious and he was holding the little princess right now. The wounds that had not been treated would definitely open up again. "It's nothing serious. Let's first report on last night's injuries." Xiao Su's expression was calm as he walked steadily with the person in his arms. Seeing that his master had made up his mind, Hualing did not say anything else and directly reported what happened last night. Chu Qingyan felt that every time she woke up, she would be in a different place. This time, it was the mountain wall again. However, the decorations inside were for normal people. She was lying on a bed, and a soft blanket covered her body. They were saved? Chu Qingyan let go of the blanket and her feet touched the ground. She prepared to go out and take a look. Although her ankle still hurt a bit, she had applied medicine and could barely walk. As soon as she went out, she heard the sound of iron being hammered. Although it was a bit far, she could still hear it clearly. It seemed like they had returned to their headquarters. At this time, she saw Hualing holding a plate. Her face filled with joy as she called out to him. Seeing the little princess, Hualing also revealed a smile. "Little young master, it seems like your complexion is quite good." "I'm lucky," she smiled. Then she pointed at the plate in his hand and asked, "What are you holding?" "This is medicine for injuries." This subordinate was preparing to send it to master. Hualing honestly replied, "His Highness is injured?" Chu Qingyan was stunned. Wasn't he still fine last night? Hualing looked at her appearance and clearly didn't know. With a bit of thought, he knew that his master didn't want the little princess to worry. He rolled his eyes and said with a sigh, "That's right, it's quite serious, but every time master is injured, he doesn't make a sound. It really is worrying." After saying this, he looked at the person in front of him and sure enough, he was scared stiff. He secretly laughed in his heart and then slapped the back of his head, saying in surprise, "Little young master, this subordinate suddenly remembered that I need to take inventory of the weapons we lost this time. How about you help this subordinate bring this medicine to master?" Chu Qingyan lowered her head and her hands were stuffed into the plate. She originally wanted to see the big ice cube and now she had a good reason, so she quickly walked towards his room. Their rooms were right next to each other, so Chu Qingyan quickly knocked on the door and went in. Xiao Su's back was currently facing her. When he heard the sound of footsteps, he did not even look up as he asked, "Where's the medicine?" When his voice fell, there was no response. He looked up in confusion and the first thing he saw was a pair of worried eyes. "Why are you here?" He unconsciously looked at her ankle. "My small injury isn't enough to keep me in bed. But you, where are you hurt?" He even told her last night that he was fine. He really knew how to lie. "It's just a small injury." Xiao Su did not plan on letting her know. "I don't believe you." Hualing had just said that his injury was quite serious. Other people's injuries were quite serious, but it was different from the big ice cubes, so it had to be very serious. Chu Qingyan walked close to him and put down the plate. Without thinking, she reached out to take off his clothes. Xiao Su reacted quickly and reached out to grab her wrist. He looked at her with a strange expression. "What are you doing?" "I'm helping you check your injury." "How can I check if I don't take off your clothes?" Chu Qingyan was more worried than shy. How could she still remember that men and women should not touch each other when giving or receiving things? Xiao Su was slightly stunned by her words. Although it was common to expose one's chest and stomach in the army, the person in front of him was not his subordinate, but the little fellow. Even the usually calm Xiao Su's expression became unnatural because of her words. "Put down the medicine. I'll apply it myself." He let go of her hand and coughed a few times before speaking. No, when you were injured in the past, I always helped you apply medicine. This time is no exception. Chu Qingyan took one of the bottles of medicine and her face revealed a rare serious expression. Xiao Su saw that he could not change her mind and finally gave in. Are you sure you want to take a look? Chu Qingyan nodded heavily. You're a real man. Stop dilly-dallying. This was the first time someone said he was dilly-dallying. Xiao Su shook his head and reached out to unbuckle his belt. Chapter 605. When the person in front of her took off his belt and took off his clothes in front of her, Chu Qingyan's face flushed red. However, when he turned around and revealed his back, the redness on her face faded and was replaced by a deathly pale complexion. The originally smooth and strong back was now a mess of flesh and blood. There were dozens of scratches on it, some had already turned pus and some had already dried up. It looked very terrifying. But after Chu Qingyan's shock, her heart was filled with pain. When he was taking off his clothes, she seemed to have heard the sound of his clothes being peeled off, but Big Ice Cube did not even bat an eyelid. Xiao Su did not hear the sound behind him and knew that she was frightened. It's fine. It looks serious, but it's actually just a flesh wound. Xiao Su comforted her with a smile. Chu Qingyan silently went forward and did not say anything. Her hands trembled as she helped him clean his wounds. She first used a needle to pry open the pus and then cleaned the bloodstains. Finally, she applied an anti-inflammatory and pain-relieving ointment. Although Big Ice Cube did not cry out in pain, Chu Qingyan could clearly feel that when she touched the deep wounds, his shoulders trembled. It must be very painful. She didn't say a word as she once again sprinkled the wound ointment. By the time she was done, it was already 2 hours later. She took the gauze and helped him wrap it around the wound. Finally, she tied a knot around his shoulder. Only then was she done. Xiao Su could clearly feel that something was wrong with her mood, but her head was lowered, and the strands of hair on her forehead fell to cover her eyes. She was also focused on treating his wound, so he didn't ask her about it. In the end, when she stood in front of him, Xiao Su slightly lowered his brows as he tried to find a topic to talk about. He wanted to break the deadlock between the two of them, but the person in front of him pounced on him without any warning. Chu Qingyan wrapped her hands around his neck and avoided the wounds on his shoulders. She buried her entire body into his chest, and the tears that she had been holding back finally fell drop by drop. Before Xiao Su could react from her actions, he felt his chest become wet. Qingyan, it's fine. It doesn't hurt. He knew that she was sad and felt the same way for her. But my heart hurts. She laid on his chest as she silently cried. When she was applying the ointment for him, she remembered that when the avalanche fell, he had blocked the large boulder that fell towards her. She clearly remembered that the boulder's edges had shined under the sunlight. When she fainted, she heard his uncontrollable groan. That must have been very painful. Moreover, the injuries on his back were not only scratches from rocks, but also sharp scratches. She couldn't help but recall that at that time, he had been fighting with a majestic black bear. Without her knowledge, he had been injured again. Her heart was filled with heart-wrenching pain. However, he didn't know how to express his feelings. He could only use the most instinctive hug to express his feelings. Silly girl, it will be fine after a while. What kind of injuries have I not suffered before? A man's body is not so precious. His emotions were affected by her. He raised his hands that were hanging by his sides and hugged her. He used one hand to pat her back and sighed slightly. In the past, it was because I did not experience your life, so I did not know. But now, I am also in your life. I will not allow you to get hurt again. Chu Qingyan choked with tears and said with a choked voice. Xiao Su replied seriously, Okay, I will obey you, my silly girl. Hearing his reply, Chu Qingyan wanted to laugh for a moment, but her emotions were quickly covered by sadness. Big Ice Cube, if there is any danger in the future, don't worry about me. Run away first. Chu Qingyan was still hugging him with her eyes closed as she said this. If it was not because he had to save her this time, with the Big Ice Cube's skills, he would not have been injured. But just as she finished speaking, she felt the person in front of her tighten his arms, almost making her unable to breathe. A cold voice fell by her ear. In my, Xiao Su's, life, there is no such thing as running away. Chu Qingyan wrinkled her nose. How domineering! But it was also because of his words that she forgot that her original intention was to let him protect himself at the crucial moment. All right, are you sure you want to push the blame onto me? Although I'm a man, it's still inappropriate to be topless. After she calmed down a lot, he patted her shoulder and asked with a light smile. When he finished speaking, Chu Qingyan then realized that she had hugged his naked upper body and cried her heart out. She could vaguely see her masterpiece on it. No, the important thing was, Chu Qingyan immediately stood up and covered her eyes as she turned her back to him. Hurry and put on your clothes. Xiao Su looked at her stomping her feet, and the corner of his mouth could not help but hold a relaxed smile. After staying in the Fuli mountain range for a few more days and confirming that Pang Huang and the others would not come again, Xiao Su finally left with Huo Ling and the others. Chu Qingyan's foot injury was almost healed, but she still had trouble walking. But when she went down the mountain, she was still carried down by the big ice cube. No matter how much she resisted, it was useless. Big ice cube, the injury on your back hasn't healed yet. Put me down, I can walk by myself. Chu Qingyan emphasized again. Xiao Su felt that she had been too noisy the entire way, so he directly put her down. Chu Qingyan let out a sigh of relief when she landed. She wanted to walk, but who knew that the snow would be too deep? Adding on the fact that her foot was injured, she fell down. Before she even took a step, she fell down like a dog eating blood. This was simply too embarrassing. Xiao Su did not let her be embarrassed for too long as he directly picked her up and carried her forward. Only by letting her fall would she stop. Xiao Su curled his lips and tightened his arms. He lifted her up a bit and continued to walk forward. The road down the mountain was still long, so Chu Qingyan simply closed her eyes. This was because as soon as she opened her eyes, she would see Huo Ling and the others smiling at her. She might as well pretend to be dead. The carriage was already waiting at the foot of the mountain. Everyone boarded the carriage and headed south with a wave of their whips. If you asked why they were heading south and not back to Lian City, Huo Ling and the others would definitely answer. Huo Ling and the others would definitely answer like this. Private matters were because their master was enlightened and planned to take the little princess to sightsee. If it was official matters, it was to recruit talents. Compared to Chu Qingyan and the others who were relaxed, other than Pang Huang at the Sichuan border, he was having a hard time. Master, we just took care of another wave of assassins. We lost 10 elites and 17 horses. Qing Feng also had quite a few wounds on his body. When he reported, he did not dare look at the angry highness in front of him. Good, very good. Xiao Su, this consort and you are irreconcilable. Pang Huang looked in the direction of the Sichuan border with eyes as cold as ice. Chapter 606. The journey was quite smooth. After traveling for 2 days, they stopped at Fu City. I heard that the magistrate of Fu City is praised by the people and is diligent. The last time they passed by Fu City, they only stopped temporarily and didn't investigate further. This time, Flowing Light was ordered by its master to secretly investigate the officials of Fu City. Xiao Su nodded. He rarely heard positive comments about officials in his fief, so he said, inform the magistrate of Fu City of Ben Wang's whereabouts. Flowing Light went to do it. In the room, Chu Qingyan said thoughtfully, isn't the magistrate of Fu City the Yang family that traveled with us last time? That's right. Big Ice Cube, are you going to denounce them or observe the people's situation this time? Recently, being suppressed by him, Chu Qingyan always had the urge to turn the tables, so she used the incident with Yang Yuhuan to tease him. Xiao Su glanced at her, and the kitten's claws popped out. Does Ben Wang look like the kind of person who uses public office for private gain? Chu Qingyan coughed softly. The words, using public office for private gain, didn't seem to match Big Ice Cube. Apply medicine. Xiao Su felt that sometimes he had to control the rhythm when teasing a cat. It wouldn't be good if it slipped away, so he decided to let her go. Chu Qingyan obediently raised her hand and obediently helped him take off his clothes. Ever since she helped him apply medicine in the mountains, Big Ice Cube became lazier and lazier. He even needed her to take off his clothes for him. It had to be said that Big Ice Cube's figure was really perfect. Even if she only saw his upper body, she couldn't help but cover her nose for fear of bleeding. However, after seeing Big Ice Cube facing her back, she didn't dare to let her imagination run wild. Because the injury this time was really serious. Just looking at the scar was scary. Big Ice Cube, the wound has basically scabbed. When we return to Lien City, I'll ask Ethereal to make you some scar-removing ointment. She poked her head out from behind him and suggested. No need. He wasn't a little girl, so he didn't care much about his looks. But you'll look better after removing the scars. You still have a lot of scars from before. If you remove them all, it'll be even better. She mumbled as she applied the medicine. Xiao Su raised his eyebrows. Scars are medals on the battlefield. This was true. Chu Qingyan had always heard from her father that getting injured on the battlefield was an honor for special forces soldiers like them. However, most of the scars on your back were from saving me, not medals. She argued. Although I'm not, I can always remind you that I got hurt because of you. At this time, Chu Qingyan's expression was stunned. However, the person in front of her had his back facing her. She didn't know what his expression was at this moment and what kind of mentality he had when he said this to her. The little girl finally quieted down. Xiao Su rubbed his aching forehead. Last night, she kicked the blanket in the carriage all night, causing him to be unable to sleep. He only cared about covering her with the blanket. She only stopped when he confined her in his arms. In these few years, he noticed that her sleeping posture was getting worse. Chu Qingyan silently applied the ointment for him and didn't mention the scar removal again. This was because she knew that the Big Ice Cube was very cold when he didn't speak, but when he spoke, he often made people speechless. However, the fact that he got hurt for her sounded very heartwarming. She smiled like a cat that had just had a good night's sleep. The moment Yang Qing received the news that His Royal Highness had arrived, he rushed over without stopping. This humble official, Yang Qing, the prefectural magistrate of Fuqing City, pays his respects to His Royal Highness. Yang Qing was wearing an official's uniform. He was about 40 years old with white hair and a big belly. When he bowed to Xiao Su, he was very nervous and his forehead was sweating. He heard that His Royal Highness was cold and ruthless, and that he had power over people's lives and was not easy to get along with. When he heard that he had arrived in Fuqing City, he first lamented and then wailed. Then he urged the carriage driver to hurry to the inn, hoping that he wouldn't be accused of negligence. Lord Yang, please rise. Xiao Su looked at Yang Qing indifferently and raised his hand slightly. Thank you, Your Highness. After Yang Qing got up, he dared to raise his head and look at the famous genius war god. He wore a symbolic mask on his face and sat upright on the chair, exuding a cold aura. Yang Qing lowered his head again. Does Your Highness have any guidance for suddenly coming to Fuqing City? It's not guidance. I just came down to see if you are really doing something for the people. Xiao Su said lightly. Yes. Your Highness is always thinking for the people. It's our blessing. Yang Qing wiped the sweat on his forehead and said with a smile. Lord Yang, you look very hot? Xiao Su asked suddenly. Chu Qingyan, who was standing at the side, saw the conversation between the two and felt like a big bad wolf teasing a little white rabbit. However, this Yang Qing shouldn't be a little white rabbit, but a giant rat. This humble official's body is full of fat and afraid of heat. Yang Qing replied with a trembling voice. Xiao Su knew his reputation among the people and officials. After he was done scaring, he said directly, This prince is not used to the accommodation in the inn. Lord Yang, you wouldn't mind arranging a place for this prince to stay, right? How was this a discussion? It was simply a notification. Chu Qingyan felt that the Big Ice Cube wasn't really cold. It was just that he was interested in things and not people. Sometimes, when he was in the mood, he could definitely tease you until you were at a loss. When he wasn't in the mood, you could only stay in the corner and draw circles. This subordinate wouldn't mind. It's simply an honor. If Your Highness doesn't mind this Fu's simple and crude, this inn was already the best place in the Fu city. If His Highness wasn't even used to living here, then he could only go to his own fu. Without waiting for Yang Qing to finish speaking, Xiao Su had already stood up. Let's go now. Yang Qing was speechless. AI, this official obeys. It's over. This was too sudden. He hadn't tidied up the fu yet. His Highness came in a hurry and acted swiftly. He didn't know if his old bones could withstand the devastation. From meeting Yang Qing to deciding to stay at the Lu Fu temporarily, it was only half an incense stick's worth of time. Big Ice Cube, is there a need for us to be in such a hurry? She didn't understand why the Big Ice Cube wanted to stay at the Lu Fu. Listening to the sound of the carriage moving through the busy city, Xiao Su leaned on the couch with a leisurely expression. The most direct way to understand a person is when he's unprepared. Chu Qingyan deeply agreed and couldn't help but give a thumbs up. The Big Ice Cube is really brilliant. She thought that the Big Ice Cube probably wanted to properly tidy up his fief, extracting the essence and discarding the dross. Officials who were inhumane withdraw. Officials who were upright stay. She didn't know which category this Yang Qing belonged to. It was debatable. That was why the Big Ice Cube made this move. Chapter 607. Xiao Su's decision to stay in the Yang residence was made at the last minute, so when their carriage arrived at the entrance of the Lu residence, it was only 2 hours before they arrived at the father city. Everyone entered the residence under Yang Qing's lead. Master. The servants came and went to greet him, but they were more or less curious about the sudden arrival of this group of strangers. When the guards who went to pick up Madam and young Miss of the Yang family were patrolling, they saw these familiar faces and instantly widened their eyes. Weren't these the people they met on the way here? Why did they appear in the residence? And looking at Master's respectful and reverent manner, they seemed to be some amazing people. Some of the Yang family guards who were unkind to Chu Qingyan and the others were sweating profusely at this moment. Please don't be like what they thought, otherwise their rice bowls would not be guaranteed. Your Highness, you're staying in this courtyard. This official has already ordered people to clean it up. If you don't like it, you can let this official know. This official will go and order people to prepare dinner to welcome you and everyone. Yang Qing bowed and said, then quickly left after Xiao Su nodded. Chu Qingyan looked at Yang Qing's fleeing figure and touched her chin. Big ice block, you clearly didn't show your face. How did you scare him away? You have to ask him about this. Xiao Su sat on the main seat, picked up the teacup, and drank the tea calmly. Chu Qingyan shook her head. This big ice block was really too much. After Yang Qing left the courtyard, he immediately rushed to the main hall. He had already asked the whole family to wait there. He had important matters to discuss. Master, you were nowhere to be seen this afternoon. Did you go to work? Madame Yang was a little impatient from waiting in the hall. Now that she saw her master come in, she began to complain. Yang Qing said anxiously, I went to pick someone up this afternoon. Pick someone up? Who is it? Don't tell me it's some vixen that you've taken a fancy to? Madame Yang immediately stood up. Yang Qing had long been accustomed to his wife's jealousy and loved to let her imagination run wild. Usually, he would let her do as she pleased, but this time, it was a serious matter. Hearing her say this, Yang Qing thought of the Buddha he worshipped in his courtyard and immediately said angrily, What nonsense are you talking about? Do you know what kind of person I received today? If I say it, you'll be scared to death. Yang Yuhuan was looking at her fingernails at this moment. She asked curiously, Father, who is it? The timid Yang Xiaohuan sat upright and still at the side. She didn't express her curiosity about this matter and just sat there quietly. Yang Qing looked around the main hall. Seeing that everyone had arrived, he cleared his throat and said, This afternoon, I received news that His Highness Prince Ing was going to make a private visit incognito, so I went to bring His Highness to the residence for the time being. This is a major matter for our Yang residents, and also for the entire Father City. Therefore, for the next few days, all of you should behave yourselves and not cause any trouble. His Royal Highness? That ferocious and ugly monster in the legends? Yang Yuhuan exclaimed. Yang Qing immediately glared at his eldest daughter who was blabbering. Is His Highness someone you can talk about? You're already so old, Why don't you know what's important? Be careful not to be heard by His Highness people and cut off your tongue. Yang Yuhuan immediately covered her mouth, not daring to breathe loudly. She was afraid that she would be caught by Xiao Su's subordinates, then she wouldn't be able to live in peace. Originally, the aide said that His Highness didn't have a side consort, and you've reached the age of marriage, so I wanted to betroth you to His Highness. But after seeing His Highness today, I feel that His Highness isn't someone we can match, so I've given up on this idea. Tonight, you all have to perform well, don't make any mistakes. His Highness's temper isn't something we can handle. Yang Qing felt that the aide's idea was okay, but today he was frightened by His Royal Highness' imposing manner. He didn't want to have a son-in-law who could scare people to death at any time. And Yang Yuhuan immediately nodded. Only a ghost would want to marry that ugly King of England. It's best if her father gave up on this idea as soon as possible. The day passed like this. Chu Qingyan leaned against the table, waiting for the legendary welcoming banquet. Big Ice Cube, when the Yang family's mother and daughter see us, do you think their intestines will turn green with regret and they'll faint from fright? Chu Qingyan thought of how the Yang family's mother and daughter didn't like them. It really was a good opportunity to slap their faces. Xiao Su glanced at her. Who was it that said using official business for personal gain? Chu Qingyan immediately pretended to be dead. I didn't hear anything. Master, official Lu invites you to the banquet. Hua Ling stood at the door and passed on the message. Xiao Su stood up and looked at the person who was still lying on the table. He suddenly reached out and patted her shoulder, saying in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "This king allows you to use official business for personal gain." Chu Qingyan had just raised her head. When she heard his words, she almost fell down. What happened to being aloof? Xiao Su hooked his lips and left in a good mood. Chu Qingyan rubbed her nose and couldn't help but smile. She then cheerfully followed him. On the way, Chu Qingyan sized up the Lu residence. It couldn't be said to be luxurious, but it couldn't be said to be shabby either. It was a proper residence. Previously, when Lu Guang reported about Yang Qing's daily actions, it mentioned that Yang Qing had never accepted bribes. Thinking about it, this should be true. Under the guidance of the servants, Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan entered the main hall. At this time, Yang Qing's entire family had already arrived. They were trembling with fear as they waited for this legendary cold-faced war god. When they came in, Yang Qing immediately stood up to welcome them. Yang Yuhuan and the others looked at the two people with fear. The first person they saw was Chu Qingyan, who was dressed in eye-catching red. Yang Yuhuan and her sister, as well as Mrs. Yang, widened their eyes in shock. How could it be this Chu Qingyan? Could it be? The three of them simultaneously shifted their gazes to the masked man in black at the very front. Was this person His Highness Prince Ing? It was simply too unexpected. Xiao Su looked straight ahead, ignoring the gazes of others. Chu Qingyan clearly saw Yang Yuhuan's deflated expression. She felt a burst of joy. Little guy, you dared to casually make a move at that time. Today, I'll scare you to death. Chu Qingyan didn't know that at this time, Yang Yuhuan's intestines were really green with regret. Because she had slandered him in front of the real His Royal Highness, saying that his face was burned by a fire many years ago. If he came out in the middle of the night, he would scare people to death. Moreover, his temper was eccentric, he would kill people at the slightest provocation, he was cold and heartless. Now that he had lost his power, and he appeared as the King of England, would she be punished by him? However, Yang Yuhuan didn't know that if this matter was known by Chu Qingyan, there was no need for Xiao Su to make a move. Chu Qingyan would have a way to get revenge for her family's big ice cube. Yang Yuhuan should be glad that Xiao Su wasn't a person with a sharp tongue. Otherwise, she would have already been torn apart by Chu Qingyan. Just when Yang Yuhuan and the others were on tenterhooks, someone exclaimed, "Brother Chu." Chapter 608. As soon as she said this, the Yang family members were shocked, especially the mother and daughter of the Yang family. They had already wanted to reduce their presence, but who would have thought that this blind person would not be able to differentiate the pros and cons, and simply wanted to drag her down. This familiar voice made Chu Qingyan look over. It was young Xiaohuan, who still looked timid. Chu Qingyan found that she had become thinner in just half a month. He nodded at her as a greeting. Young Xiaohuan had just blurted it out, but she regretted it as soon as it left her mouth. However, she didn't expect that Chu Yunxing would respond to her. She was so excited that she didn't see the ugly faces of her family and Xiao Su's gloomy face. He had almost forgotten that the Yang family still had young Xiaohuan, who admired the little fellow. His face was a little unhappy now. At this moment, Yang Qing noticed that His Highness Prince Ying's face was somewhat unhappy, and he was so scared that his lips turned white. He had been busy for the entire afternoon, and only cared about His Highness Prince Ying, so he didn't notice the person beside him. At this moment, he saw that she was also wearing a silver mask and had an elegant demeanor. He immediately recalled the rumors that His Highness had a capable subordinate by his side, named Chu Yan. He didn't know how his youngest daughter got to know this Chu Yan, and now he regretted letting his youngest daughter attend the banquet. Yang Qing immediately changed the topic. Your Highness, please have a seat. Young Master Chu, please have a seat too. After they sat down, Chu Qingyan said, I did not expect to meet Mrs. Yang and the two young misses of the Yang family on the way here. It is such a pleasant surprise to be able to sit at the same table for dinner. Yang Qing was confused. He turned to look at his wife and daughter. You know young Master Chu? Mrs. Yang and Yang Yuhuan did not know what to say. Yang Yuhuan immediately pushed her younger sister out. Let Xiaohuan answer this. Yang Xiaohuan glanced at Chu Qingyan, then immediately lowered her head and replied softly, replying to father, before we returned to the residence, we were with His Royal Highness and Big Brother Chu. On the way back, they caught the bandits and saved us. They even accompanied us to Father's city. Yang Qing came to a sudden realization and immediately raised his cup to Xiao Su and Chu Qingyan. I didn't expect there to be such a connection. This official thanks Your Highness and young Master Chu for protecting my family's wife and daughter. Otherwise, with the ferocity of those bandits, I'm afraid they wouldn't have been able to return home safely. Xiao Su ignored Yang Qing's hand that was raised in midair, and instead took the wine cup of the person beside him. He said indifferently, drink some tea. I'm 15. I can drink now. Chu Qingyan was a little unhappy. For so many years, she had been disciplined by the big ice cube and was not allowed to touch a single drop of wine. After being in ancient times for so long, she still did not know what wine tasted like. Was it as bitter as beer? Be obedient. Xiao Su glared at her, then turned his head to Yang Qing, whose hands were almost sore from holding the cup, and said, give her a new pot of tea. Outside, shouldn't people at this age drink wine? His Highness seemed to treat this Chu Qingyan very differently. Because the two of them were whispering just now, Yang Qing did not know what the two of them were talking about. He only felt that their posture was intimate. If he had heard the content of the conversation, he was afraid that it would not be as simple as treating her differently. Chu Qingyan looked at the wine cup that was pushed to the side, then looked at the new teacup that fell in front of her. Her heart was filled with anger. Could they still have a proper meal? Yang Qing finally drank the wine that he had been holding for a long time. He sighed inwardly. This His Royal Highness really did not play by the rules. Yang Yuhuan, who was at the side, after the apprehension and the worry of her scandal being exposed, found that His Royal Highness turned a deaf ear to her. Moreover, after this matter was mentioned by Chu Yan, it was forgotten. Her heart was greatly relieved. Now she also had the mind to deal with the matter in front of her. It turned out that the man with the appearance that could topple cities was His Royal Highness. It seemed that the rumors could not be completely trusted. Moreover, he did not look fierce. At least he treated his subordinates amiably. Especially that Chu Yan, who was simply very trustworthy. As for her previous speculation that he liked male pets, at this time, she rejected it. With such a noble background and peerless appearance, how could he be a short-sleeved man? Moreover, there was still a princess in his residence who had never been seen. Therefore, Yang Yuhuan firmly believed that she must have misunderstood the King of England. How could he not like women and not like men? After seeing Xiao Su's true appearance and learning of his identity, Yang Yuhuan's thoughts began to stir again. Previously, she had been rejected because His Royal Highness was not such a casual person. After the matter, he did not pursue her actions and was even willing to accompany her all the way to her father's city. Therefore, could she believe that he actually did not dislike her and was only shy? Moreover, it was not legitimate, and that was why he had rejected her that night. There was a type of person who, when their heart was expecting something, would use all kinds of reasons to look in the direction of their expectations. This was a classic case of hallucination. And Yang Yuhuan was a severe sufferer of this disease. Yang Yuhuan secretly glanced at Xiao Su, her heart thumping. If she told her father that she was willing to marry His Royal Highness, then with her identity as the first daughter of the prefectural magistrate, would it be legitimate? Just as this thought floated up, Yang Yuhuan made up her mind. After the banquet was over, she would tell her father. This was a talented and good-looking husband who could not be found anywhere. It must be heaven's mercy to let her meet him. If this marriage was successful, it would be a beautiful story. Chu Qingyan naturally did not know that Yang Yuhuan was narcissistic to this extent and still had delusions of having ideas about her family's big ice cube. At this time, her obsession had already turned to tasting wine. Big Ice Cube did not let her drink, but she insisted on drinking. She secretly took the wine cup that was placed on the side, wanting to take the opportunity when he was not paying attention to taste it. However, Xiao Su, who knew her like the back of his hand, had long noticed her unwillingness to give up. When he was talking to Yang Qing, he snatched her wine cup and handed it to the servant behind him, warning her with his eyes. Since there was no more wine around her, Xiao Su was relieved to continue to talk with Yang Qing about the development of her father's city in the past few years. Xiao Su did not know that for some people, the more you repressed them, the faster they would rebound. At this time, Chu Qingyan was annoyed that there was no wine to drink, but a wine cup was handed to her from the side, and her eyes brightened. When she was about to take the wine cup, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She turned her head and saw Yang Xiaohuan, who was smiling cautiously. She revealed a puzzled expression. She only heard Yang Xiaohuan whisper, "Xiaohuan saw that Big Brother Chu wanted to drink, so she secretly gave it to you. Don't let your family's highness find out." After saying that, she immediately retracted her neck and pretended that nothing had happened. Chu Qingyan was amused by her actions, and a genuine warm smile appeared in her eyes. She quickly changed the teacup and raised the cup to her, silently saying, "Thank you." Chapter 609. Although the wine cup and teacup looked the same, when Chu Qingyan brought the cup to her lips, she unconsciously looked at the person beside her. She felt that people who did bad things would feel guilty, like she was doing it now. However, he found that Big Ice Cube was chatting with Yang Qing and was not paying attention to him. He was delighted and immediately drank the wine in one gulp. Cough cough, so spicy. Chu Qingyan choked on her food and swallowed it down with much difficulty. At this time, someone was patting her back. It was a familiar rhythm and strength. She knew it was the Big Ice Cube just by thinking. She was already used to the interaction between the two, so Chu Qingyan did not feel anything. But Xiao Su's action in everyone's eyes, especially in Yang Qing's eyes, immediately became, "His Highness is very considerate of his subordinates. He really is a good master." If Hualing and the others knew what these people were thinking, they would probably spit out 3 liters of blood. His Highness is only good to the little princess consort like this. If he was like this to them, they would probably have a few broken ribs. This was the difference between close and distant. Chu Qingyan enjoyed Big Ice Cube's comfort with a clear conscience. Xiao Su, on the other hand, continued his conversation with Yang Qing without even turning his head after Chu Qingyan calmed down. Although the first mouthful of wine was very spicy, she felt her entire body warm up and her body float. Drinking wine was so comfortable. The Big Ice Cube was so stingy, not letting her touch it normally. The interaction between her little sister and Chu Qingyan had already entered Yang Yuhuan's eyes. She turned her eyes. Chu Qingyan was His Royal Highness' confidant. If she became a Ce Fei in the future, she would have to build a good relationship. So she turned to say a few words to the maidservant beside her, and that maidservant left. When she came back, she was holding a teapot. The maidservant walked to Chu Qingyan's side and respectfully said, "Young Master Chu, this is the special tea my family's eldest miss prepared for you. You can try it." Chu Qingyan looked suspiciously in Yang Yuhuan's direction. She saw that she was smiling very kindly, which was very different from her previous arrogant image. She looked thoughtfully at the teapot and then took it. Just like that, he gently shook the teapot, and a fragrant aroma wafted out. Chu Qingyan blinked. It was wine. Chu Qingyan couldn't help looking at Yang Yuhuan again. She saw that her smile was even more kindly. Chu Qingyan understood, she wanted to bribe her. Was she planning on making a move against the big ice cube again? It had to be said, sometimes, a woman's intuition. Chu Qingyan's lips slightly curled and revealed a mocking smile. Such a shallow woman. Was she, Chu Qingyan, so easy to bribe? However, this wine couldn't be wasted. Chu Qingyan poured a cup of wine for herself. Smelling it, it was quite fragrant, so she drank the cup. Chu Qingyan had never drunk ancient wine, so she didn't know that this wine had to be savored slowly and couldn't be drunk too quickly. Otherwise, the accumulated aftertaste would be even stronger. It was a pity that Xiao Su, who occasionally turned his head, saw her drinking tea with a normal expression and didn't realize that she had already drunk half a pot of wine. Yang Qing put forward many suggestions regarding the governance of Fu City, which were all accepted by His Highness. He was very happy. At the table, Chu Qingyan drank her first wine in ancient times. She was very happy. So the entire banquet was full of joy. Xiao Su left the hall with Chu Qingyan. When he was about to walk towards his courtyard, he suddenly heard a call from behind. His Royal Highness. Xiao Su frowned. When his footsteps stopped, the person who called him had already walked in front of him. With the help of the moonlight, he saw the person who stopped him. It was Yang Yuhuan. Yang Yuhuan was panting as she walked in front of him. His Highness's legs were really long and he walked too fast. She almost couldn't catch up. She raised her head and saw His Royal Highness' cold gaze under the moonlight. She couldn't help but tremble, but she quickly gathered her courage. "Your Highness, I didn't know your identity before and mistakenly heard the rumors. I said some inappropriate things in front of you. Please don't take it to heart." Xiao Su's mood tonight was pretty good because his fief had an official who had some ideas, so he drank a bit of wine. But when this troublemaker appeared in front of him, he was very impatient. If she wasn't Yang Qing's daughter, he would have already had people drag her away. So he subconsciously looked at the little fellow behind him. Usually, it was the little fellow who scared away the flowers and plants. He originally wanted her to take care of them, but he found her standing quietly behind him with her head lowered, as if she had nothing to do with it. He couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Was she throwing a tantrum because he didn't give her wine tonight? He rubbed his chin. It looked like he had to appease this angry little wildcat later. Yang Yuhuan didn't know that the person in front of her was distracted and thought that he had silently forgiven her. Her heart was nervous and happy. In the end, she boldly said, "Your Highness, I said before that father wanted to marry you. It's true. In the future, we will be a family. Yuhuan and the princess consort will serve you well." When Xiao Su came back to his senses, he only heard her last sentence. His face darkened. Who gave her the courage? Yang Yuhuan lowered her head and shyly finished speaking. When she carefully wanted to see his reaction, a gust of wind suddenly attacked her. Before she could react, she felt a pain in her shoulder and then she was sent flying into a tree trunk. Everything happened too suddenly. She didn't care about the pain in her back and only felt that someone was pressing down on her. She opened her eyes in a panic and saw a pair of seductive watery eyes blinking in front of her. They were innocent, but also evil and cunning. She had never seen a temperament that could combine seduction and innocence so seamlessly. But the person in front of her could easily control it. A delicate fragrance mixed with the smell of wine lingered around her like this, as if she was isolated from the outside world. She was so scared that she wanted to escape from this terrifying shroud, but the hand on her shoulder was as heavy as 1,000 pounds of gold. She didn't dare to act rashly. She saw the person holding her down slowly lean closer to her until he was right next to her ear. A voice as beautiful as the singing of an enchantress sounded in her ear. "Who allowed you to have designs on my big ice block over and over again? Big ice cube? Who was that?" But Yang Yuhuan was already unable to speak at this time. Even if she could speak, it wouldn't be smooth. She could only look at the silver-masked youth in front of her in horror. Her fiery red lips slightly opened as she once again softly spoke. "I'm warning you, don't have any thoughts that you shouldn't have because that is my person. Otherwise, it wouldn't be as simple as scaring you." The innocent voice sounded like it was making a little joke. But Yang Yuhuan knew that it wasn't a joke. Her legs trembled as she could only desperately nod her head. "Good girl." The silver-masked youth tilted his head and gently patted her shoulder. His smile was pure and innocent. But Yang Yuhuan looked at her in horror. She feared this person from the bottom of her heart. Chapter 610. Chu Qingyan let go of her hand and Yang Yuhuan collapsed to the ground. She tilted her head. She was just trying to scare her. Why was she so fragile? She clapped her hands and turned to walk towards the people behind her. Xiao Su only saw the little fellow pressing Yang Yuhuan against the tree trunk. He didn't know what she said, but he didn't care at all. The little fellow had a sense of propriety and he was very relieved. However, if he knew what his little rascal had said to Yang Yuhuan, he probably wouldn't be so calm and collected. "Let's go back." Chu Qingyan lowered her head in acknowledgement and continued to follow behind him. Xiao Su frowned. "Don't walk so slowly. Let's walk together." "I want to see your back," Chu Qingyan said to him with a smile. Xiao Su was slightly stunned. The little fellow was a little strange, but her words pleased him and he didn't say anything. Chu Qingyan walked behind him and looked at his back. She tilted her head and looked puzzled but happy. Why was her big ice cube so good-looking even from the back? She couldn't help but think of when she was in university. Because her roommate's back was too good-looking, her male classmates gave her the nickname of Back View Killer. AI, the big ice cube was the male version of Back View Killer. Along the way, Xiao Su only felt that the people behind him were staring at him with a burning gaze, but when he turned around he saw the little fellow's smiling face. Because it was too dark, he didn't notice that there was an unnatural blush on her snow-white skin. When he pushed open the door, the room was pitch black. Xiao Su frowned. Just as he was about to ask someone to light the candles, a pair of hands suddenly reached out from behind and wrapped around his waist. Then, a soft body pressed against his back, causing him to tremble. "Big Ice Cube, your body is so cold and comfortable." Then a soft voice exploded in his ears. Xiao Su didn't care about their current posture. He turned around and entered the room, then closed the door. As soon as the door was closed, the person behind him was pulled in front of him. "Qingyan, what's wrong with you?" The room was very dark. Even if the moonlight shone through the window, she could only see the outline of the person in front of her. "Nothing." The person in front of him shook his head. As soon as he finished speaking, Xiao Su's body stiffened. This was because a pair of soft and boneless hands had wrapped around his waist. "You call this nothing?" He hadn't noticed anything unusual about her tonight, so why did she change the way she spoke and acted the moment she returned to the room? "Big Ice Cube, you're hurting me." Chu Qingyan twisted her hand and found that the other party's hands were clasped tightly. She raised her head and complained. Xiao Su loosened his grip when the person in front of him spoke again. "Big Ice Cube, lower your head. I have something to say to you," Chu Qingyan said seriously. Thinking that she had returned to normal, Xiao Su did not suspect anything and leaned down. Seeing that he was cooperating, Chu Qingyan smiled subtly. Then she immediately moved her head closer, brushing against his cheek as she whispered into his ear. At this moment, Xiao Su frowned. "Did you drink?" He smelled a strong scent of alcohol. Just now, he thought that he had smelled his own, but he didn't expect it to be hers. Before he could finish his sentence, he felt something wet and soft against his earlobe. Xiao Su immediately forgot to react. He also didn't remember that he was questioning her a second ago. Chu Qingyan seemed to be very satisfied with his cooperation and reaction. She left his earlobe, tilted her head, and dropped a feather-light droplet on his chin. Just as she was about to make her next move, Xiao Su had already recovered from his shock. He instantly straightened up, picked up the person in front of him and placed her on a chair. Then, he sat down 3 or 4 chairs away from her. "Didn't I tell you not to drink? Where did you get the alcohol?" He could already confirm that she had drunk tonight, and it looked like she had drunk quite a lot. He still remembered that Father Chu had casually told him that Kai couldn't drink. When she was young, she had mistakenly drunk a mouthful of alcohol from the uncle next door, and then went crazy. It was obvious that her alcohol tolerance was very low, so this was also why he had not allowed her to touch a drop of alcohol all these years. It was not only for her growth, but also because of Father Chu's words. But now, it seemed that it was not as simple as going crazy. If she had gone crazy, he could have stopped her. But now, it was giving him a headache. Chu Qingyan stood up from the chair and slowly walked towards that person. "Xiao Huan secretly gave me a cup, and Yang Yuhuan wanted to get close to me, so she changed the tea to wine." Chu Qingyan smiled a little mischievously. When she said these words to attract his attention, she had already put one hand on his shoulder, then sat on his knee and leaned her whole body on his chest. The veins on Xiao Su's forehead bulged. "Tonight, this little fellow was really... Do you know what you're doing right now?" Xiao Su gritted his teeth at the person who was rubbing against his chest and sniffing here and there. "I know." The person raised her head and took off the obstructive mask on her face. Then, without warning, she reached out to him and took off the mask that had touched her face just now. "I'm taking advantage of you." She smiled and the faint light shone on her face. Only her red lips were moving, and he couldn't bear to look away. Xiao Su held his forehead. "You're drunk." "I'm not drunk. It's the wine that makes me drunk. Big Ice Cube, you're the one who made me drunk." Chu Qingyan smiled like a flower, and her eyes flashed with seriousness, gentleness, sincerity, seductiveness, and a mess of emotions. All in all, it was summed up in one sentence: she was going to have him tonight. Xiao Su was speechless, and he didn't know how to answer her. "Big Ice Cube, don't be so stingy. Just let me have a piece of tofu, okay?" Her hands were held tightly in his palms again, and she couldn't help but start to negotiate with him. Xiao Su couldn't help but laugh. Did she really think that tofu could be eaten in pieces? "No." He said righteously. "Then I'll be good and let me have it," she said in a roundabout way. Xiao Su's face darkened. "No." Chu Qingyan was annoyed. She lowered her head and bit his neck. Xiao Su didn't guard against her, and was bitten quite badly. His hands subconsciously loosened. And the person who was close to him had a look of success in her eyes. She broke free from his grip and reached for him again. This time, it was his belt. Xiao Su wasn't so easily fooled this time. He grabbed her hands and put them behind her back. He resisted the restless heat in his body and said in a low and serious voice, "Don't move, or I'll tie you up." Xiao Su was just scaring her, but it seemed to have worked. Because the person leaning on him didn't move for a long time. Xiao Su relaxed his brows, and then he heard her even breathing. He was stunned, and then he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. A certain someone, who had made him look so miserable, had fallen asleep without a care in the world. Chapter 611. The sunlight shone in through the window and fell on the person on the bed. The light of the spring sun was warm, but after being in the sun for a long time, it was a bit hot. Chu Qingyan was woken up by this warm sunlight. She opened one eye and the light was a bit blinding. She closed it again, opened the other eye, and closed it again. After repeating this cycle, she rubbed her heavy head and slowly got up. What was wrong with her? Why did she feel like her entire body was filled with lead and her head was aching? After seeing the room clearly, she was even more confused. How did she come back last night? She remembered that she drank wine last night and then her entire body became dizzy and she lost consciousness in the end. After calming down, she lifted the blankets and got up. After tidying herself up, she left the room. "Master, you're awake." Jean Exon heard the sound of the door opening and slightly bowed in greeting. What time is it now? Chu Qingyan held her forehead and casually asked. Noon. The hand holding her forehead paused. Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows. She really slept too deeply today. How did I come back last night? She continued to ask. Jean Exon honestly replied. His Highness sent you back. Last night, you were drunk and fell asleep in His Highness' room. Chu Qingyan's face was filled with shock. Why did she not have any recollection of it? She desperately tried to remember what happened at the banquet last night. She only remembered that the wine was really good, and the more she drank, the more addictive she became. After that, she did not remember anything and slept until the sky was bright. Where is His Highness? She was thinking about this in her mind as she casually asked. He went out with official Yang this morning. Jean Exon replied. Why didn't anyone call me? Chu Qingyan frowned. Before His Highness left, he told us not to let anyone disturb you and to let you sleep until you wake up naturally. Jean Exon continued to answer. Oh, then I didn't do anything outrageous last night, did I? She asked tentatively. Jean Exon shook his head. Last night, he wasn't by his master's side. Seeing that she hadn't returned in the middle of the night, he originally planned to look for her. But halfway there, he saw His Highness sending her back. However, he found that His Highness's cold aura was stronger than usual, so he didn't dare to approach him. She didn't know how her master had offended him. Thinking of this, Jean Exon paused. Should he mention this to his master? Just as Jean Exon was hesitating, his master had already left the room. Jean Exon thought it was better not to say it. In any case, according to His Highness's daily behavior of spoiling his master, it might just be a small fight. Small skirmishes? Would Xiao Su think so? Chu Qingyan wandered out of her courtyard. Because she was bored in her room, she wanted to go out for a walk. Just as she stepped out of the courtyard, she saw Yang Yuhuan sitting under a tree drinking tea. It really was enemies on a narrow road. Thinking of the way she looked at the big ice cube at the dinner table, it really made people feel uncomfortable. But she thought that it was better not to talk to this little girl so early in the morning, so as to avoid attracting bad luck. Chu Qingyan wanted to turn around and leave, but she noticed Yang Yuhuan's movement. Yang Yuhuan was drinking there, but the corner of her eyes inadvertently saw a red figure. She stiffened her neck and looked up. When she saw the person clearly, the cup in her hand slipped and fell. She stood up in fright and stepped back. She couldn't stand steadily and fell to the ground. Chu Qingyan stopped in her tracks in surprise as she looked at the terrified Yang Yuhuan. She couldn't help but rub her chin. Could it be that Yang Yuhuan had already mastered the skill of scaring people out of their wits with just one look? Yang Yuhuan didn't care about the pain. She wanted to call the servants to help her leave this demon, but she didn't think that a pair of exquisite boots would be standing in front of her. When she looked up, that silver-masked youth had already lowered his head and leaned over. She screamed and instantly crawled back a few steps. Chu Qingyan straightened up, feeling even more strange. It had only been one night and this Yang Yuhuan had already encountered a ghost? Eldest young Miss Yang, Chu Qingyan raised her eyebrows and then softly said, Have you been possessed? Yang Yuhuan shook her head repeatedly. You. Chu Qingyan imitated her words. What's wrong with you? Yang Yuhuan saw that she didn't have the strange coquettish aura from last night and retreated a lot in panic. With the help of the servant girls, she slowly stood up. But when she saw Chu Qingyan looking at her in confusion, she couldn't help but look in front of her in horror and said, Young Master Chu, last night you. Last night? What happened last night? Chu Qingyan was very puzzled. She only drank a pot of wine last night. What could happen? Yang Yuhuan looked at the person slowly approaching her and couldn't take it anymore. Then Chu Qingyan saw this delicate eldest young Miss Yang run away as if she was being chased by an evil ghost, stumbling and falling as she ran out of the courtyard in a sorry state. That's strange. Why did this Yang Yuhuan look like she had seen a ghost? Chu Qingyan was very puzzled. At this moment, when she turned around with a stomach full of questions, she found Yang Xiaohuan standing behind her, looking hesitant and at a loss of what to do. What's the matter? Chu Qingyan recovered her gentle tone and asked. I. Yang Xiaohuan looked at the person in front of her who was seriously asking her and suddenly didn't know where to place her hands. Chu Qingyan saw her stuttering I for a long time, but she wasn't anxious and calmly waited for her to speak. Some people just needed her to get rid of her psychological barriers so that her future path would be smooth. If she kept hesitating, then there would never be any progress. Yang Xiaohuan seemed to have felt the encouragement of the person in front of her and finally mustered up her courage to speak. "Big brother Chu, can I go with you?" When these words came out, Chu Qingyan was a little surprised. Yang Xiaohuan, who had been observing her expression, saw her reaction and her face turned gloomy. She knew that the matter she raised would be unimaginable, and even she herself felt that it was inconceivable. If she wanted the other party to agree, that would be even more impossible. Chu Qingyan also saw Yang Xiaohuan's disappointed expression and she couldn't help but restrain her expression. She didn't forget that she was dressed as a man at this moment. The other party's words couldn't help but cause people to have wild and fanciful thoughts. A young lady telling a man that she wanted to go with him, this was obviously eloping. Could it be that some of her usual caring words and actions had been misunderstood by her? After all, a young lady at this age was already experiencing the first awakening of love. Yang Xiaohuan had always been a timid and shy little sister in her eyes. Suddenly doing this to her, wasn't this making her? But if that was the case, then wouldn't she have cheated an innocent and naive young lady? Thinking of this, she couldn't help but shiver. Oh my God, it would still be all right if she cheated a young man, but why did it have to be this little Lolita in front of her? She could already imagine how ugly that Ice Cube's already icy cold face would become. Chapter 612. Why? Chu Qingyan takes a deep breath. Although it's inconceivable and shocking, she has to ask clearly. This is related to a younger sister's lifelong happiness. She originally thought that she wouldn't get a reply from Big Brother Chu and that she would be looked down upon. She was already so sad that she wanted to give up. But at her good-natured question, the little flame in his heart was humbly kindled again. Because Yang Xiaohuan raises her head, her eyes watery, Big Brother Chu is the only person who treats Xiaohuan well other than mother. I don't want to stay here anymore. I want to follow you. Even if I have to be a maid, I'm also willing. Be a maid? Chu Qingyan purses her lips. You don't want to be the young miss of a dignified prefectural magistrate and follow a nobody like me as a maid. Don't you think this idea is too impulsive? Yang Xiaohuan shakes her head. I've never enjoyed the treatment a young miss should have here, and I also feel that I'm not worthy. After all, I'm a concubine's daughter, and a concubine's daughter is only a little better than a third-rank maid. But her status in the Yang household is probably even lower than a low-rank maid. You think that by following me, you can enjoy glory, splendor, wealth, and rank? She can't be blamed for saying this. She has to let this little girl see the truth. Yang Xiaohuan hurriedly shakes her head. It's not like that, Big Brother Chu. Xiaohuan has never thought of climbing up to you. In the end, she doesn't know how to explain herself anymore. She's so anxious that tears are welling up in her eyes. Then what is it? Just because I treat you well? Xiaohuan, look clearly, I'm a man now. If you say such things to a man, it's easy for people to misunderstand. Moreover, I'm only a follower of His Highness. It's very difficult to take you away from your father. Chu Qingyan forces herself to say these words because it's the truth. I don't want to be restrained in one place. I also have dignity. I don't want to be humiliated, but I can't be strong now. I don't have power. Everyone can trample on me. I don't have a mother. My father only cares about his work and has never cared about me. For so many years, I have been walking alone. I long for someone to reach out and give me a hand. Chu Qingyan didn't expect her to say these words. Looking at her, she seems to recall herself in the capital. That weak girl who always wanted to be strong. It's a lie to say that she's not moved. In the end, Yang Xiaohuan bravely raises her head, and that person has finally come. It's you. I know it's you. You, Chu Qingyan doesn't know what to say. Yang Xiaohuan wipes her tears and smiles. Her smile is sad and relieved. Before Mother left, she said that there are many things in this world that don't fall in front of you for no reason. So you have to rely on your own two hands to fight for them. Today, Xiaohuan stands in front of Big Brother Chu and says these words. Xiaohuan has already fought for it. No matter where I am in the future, I won't regret what I did today. After saying that, young Xiaohuan nods at her and prepares to leave. Her words and actions were too out of line. She's afraid that she scared Big Brother Chu, but she doesn't regret it. Have you finished reading those books? A clear and gentle voice rang out behind her, successfully stopping her in her tracks. She turns her head. Puzzled, astonished, and expectant, she looks at the youth in front of her. She woodenly nods her head. I've finished reading. Tomorrow, I'll check on you. If you pass, I'll take you away. Taking you away from your father's hands may be difficult for others, but for me, it's not difficult. The silver-masked youth says it very softly, but when it falls into her ears, it's as heavy as 1,000 pounds of gold. Big drops of tears roll down her face, but she smiles incomparably joyfully. There's a voice in her heart telling her to take her away. Chu Qingyan wants to take a gamble. This is a girl who makes people's hearts pity her. In the end, is it worth it for her to block her way? In another place. Your Highness? Your Highness? Your Highness? After Yang Qing finished talking about his prospects for Father City, he's full of satisfaction waiting for his Royal Highness's judgment. But after he spoke for a long time, the person beside him didn't respond. He can't help but try calling out a few times. His call didn't get any response. Yang Qing thinks that maybe his suggestion is too good. His Highness is deep in thought, so he didn't hear his call. Then he should wait a little longer. So Yang Qing is full of satisfaction as he stands in the wind and waits. On the way, he sneezes a few times. At this time, Xiao Su, who is patrolling Father City's defense with Yang Qing, didn't think that he would be distracted on such an important occasion. This is a mistake that has never happened before. And once he's distracted, he's been distracted for an entire afternoon. He stands on the city wall, looking at the bustling streets. His thoughts have already drifted to last night. The little girl didn't listen to his warning. She secretly drank wine and then started to act crazy. But her drunkenness is different from other people's unreasonable scolding, but he purses his lips. He never thought that the little girl would do such a thing to him. What's worse is that his body already has a reaction. His body has a reaction to the girl he cares for so much. This is such an embarrassing thing. She should be a treasure in his hands, but he has feelings for her. This realization made Xiao Su clench his fists involuntarily. Because right now, he damnably recalls the delicate fragrance on her body. His body instantly tenses up. He immediately closes his eyes and uses his internal energy to suppress the heat in his body. Finally, he exhales a mouthful of turbid air. When he opens his eyes again, his eyes have already recovered their clarity. Your Highness! Yang Qing saw him take a deep breath and immediately called out again. Having his thoughts interrupted, Xiao Su is a little unhappy. But he hid his emotions very well. What did official Yang say just now? Say it again. Yang Qing has a feeling of being poured a mouthful of cold wind. Did His Highness not hear a single word he said just now? It's like this official feels that Father City. Yang Qing doesn't dare to disobey and immediately says it again. But after Yang Qing says it again, a certain person's mind is wandering again. So, the following conversation is, Official Yang, say it again. It's like this official feels that Father City. This conversation is repeated all the way. Yang Qing repeats until his mouth is dry, but Xiao Su continues to be distracted. To be precise, Xiao Su has been in a daze for the entire afternoon. She was caught up in the strange feeling of having wild thoughts about the child she had raised herself. This feeling is very strange and helpless. At the same time, it also made him understand something. Chapter 613. Your Highness, it's getting late. Do you want to go back for dinner? Yang Qing had been talking for the whole afternoon and his mouth was dry. Looking at the dusk, his stomach was about to sing the empty fort strategy. However, the master in front of him was still looking at something in the cold wind. As subordinates, they didn't understand the world of His Highness, but he had been gone for a day. He should at least let him go back for dinner. Hearing his subordinate's slightly aggrieved and hoarse voice, Xiao Su didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, he stood on the gate tower for a while. Seeing the towering figure in front of him not moving, Yang Qing rubbed his stomach and secretly tightened his belt. He didn't know how long His Highness would stay, so he had to be prepared. Finally, after the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the great Buddha in front of him finally opened his mouth. What restaurants are there in Fu City? Yang Qing was delighted. Drunken Complacent and Drunken Mimi, these two restaurants are not bad. One is famous for its drunken duck, while the other is famous for its sweetened, sour ribs. Which one does Your Highness want to go to? So His Highness didn't want to go back to eat. It seemed that he was really too stupid. He couldn't even understand His Highness's thoughts. If he had suggested eating outside earlier, he wouldn't have to stay in the cold wind for so long. However, Yang Qing, who was standing behind the great Buddha, didn't see the indescribable emotion that flashed across the great Buddha's face when he said the names of Drunken Complacent and Drunken Mimi. Change. The voice was a little tense. Yang Qing was so frightened by this cold voice that his legs trembled. He didn't know how these two shops had offended the big Buddha. He immediately racked his brains to think of what other restaurants in Fu City were worth mentioning. Dream Immortal Restaurant? Approved. After Xiao Su casually responded, he took the lead and went down the city gate tower. Only then did Yang Qing wipe the cold sweat on his forehead and quickly followed. Drunken Complacent and Drunken Mimi, these two names were quite good. Unfortunately, they both had the word drunk, which reminded the great Buddha of someone's drunken state last night. Therefore, it could be said that the word drunk was taboo in the great Buddha's ears. Chu Qingyan was in the Yang residence. She waited from day to night but didn't see anyone. She couldn't help but call Hualing over. Hualing, why isn't His Highness back yet? It didn't seem to be his habit to stay out at night. This subordinate doesn't know. I heard that Master and Sir Yang are eating at a restaurant outside. Do you need this subordinate to investigate which restaurant Master is at? Hualing reported. At the end, he suddenly thought of something and asked with a smile. He clearly felt that his master's mood was a bit abnormal when he went out today. He didn't know if it had something to do with the little princess in front of him, so he wanted to give the little princess a push. The two of them didn't make any progress, and everyone was anxious. It was just like how the eunuch was more anxious than the emperor. All right. Chu Qingyan waved her hand and dismissed him. Chu Qingyan was still thinking about Yang Xiaohuan at this time, so she didn't notice the look on Hualing's face. If Big Ice Cube agreed, she would keep Yang Xiaohuan by her side. Tomorrow's test was just to make her feel at ease. Yang Xiaohuan stayed by her side through her strength, which could also be considered as giving her an honorable identity. Chu Qingyan's side was calm and peaceful, but Yang Qing's side was filled with ice and fire. This was because His Highness in front of him wasn't eating or eating. He was just holding a wine cup in his hand. He didn't know what he was thinking about, but when he was deep in thought, the food would turn cold. He could still remember when he entered the private room. He couldn't figure out His Highness' preferences, so when he asked if he wanted to invite singers and dancers, he was frozen stiff by His Highness' cold eyes. So from the moment he sat down until now, he didn't dare to breathe out loud, trying his best to be invisible. If His Highness treated him as air, as a wall, as a chair, as anything, it was fine. Sir Yang. Xiao Su, who had been silent the entire time, suddenly spoke. Yang Qing dropped his chopsticks with a pada sound, and then his body trembled in fear as he replied, Your Highness, what orders do you have? The Yang family's second miss is your daughter? Towards this completely unrelated question, Yang Qing was stunned at first before replying in a small voice, Yes. Could his daughter not be his daughter? How could he be cuckolded? Then I'll fulfill my responsibility as a father. Xiao Su stood up, looked down at him, and turned to leave. If he fulfilled his responsibility as a father, then his little fellow wouldn't have to spend so much effort on Yang Xiaohuan. Only people who haven't experienced warmth would crave warmth. But in this world, only he could have the little fellow's warmth. Yang Qing sat there in a daze. He didn't know what His Highness meant. However, the look His Highness gave him just now froze him again. Xiao Su had just returned to the palace when Hua Ling came forward to greet him. Xiao Su had just put down his cloak when he heard Hua Ling's hesitant voice. "Speak," Xiao Su said concisely. Hua Ling raised his head to look at him before lowering his head again. Tonight, the young princess consort seemed to be in a bad mood. Right now, she's locked herself in her room. Xiao Su's fingers paused and he raised his eyebrows. Who did she come into contact with today? Yang family's eldest miss and second miss. Hua Ling replied truthfully. After Xiao Su responded, he turned and walked out the door. Hua Ling looked at his master's back and secretly made a yay sign. Don't ask him why he knew, he learned it from the young princess consort. Do you know that you're asking for trouble? Hua Ling had just walked out the door when he heard Turin's words. Hua Ling snorted. Am I the only one who's anxious? Aren't you all anxious? Don't hide it from me. What happened between Master and the young princess consort in the room last night? Why is Master's actions so abnormal today? Turin coughed softly when he heard this. I wasn't too close last night, so I'm not too clear. He didn't clearly see the young princess consort suddenly hug Master and didn't clearly see Master's expression change. Hua Ling looked at him suspiciously and didn't ask anything in the end. In the quiet courtyard at night, Xiao Su walked slowly and calmly, but when he reached the closed door, his raised hand suddenly paused in midair. At this time, an indescribable emotion surged in his heart. He didn't know what kind of attitude he should have when facing the person inside. Last night, her affectionate attachment, her unrelenting lips, and the heat that couldn't be ignored reappeared in front of his eyes. He knew that it was because she was drunk. When she was drunk, no matter what she did, it had nothing to do with her real self because those actions were all unconscious. If it was a normal day, the little fellow wouldn't do such a thing and definitely wouldn't do such a thing. But he couldn't lie to himself. At that moment, he had evil thoughts about her. Xiao Su slowly withdrew his hand. At this moment, when his mind was in a mess, he couldn't see her. Chapter 6:14. Just as he was about to turn around and leave, there was a soft sound from the door. His back suddenly stiffened. He had been so distracted that he didn't even hear the footsteps behind the door. Then the door was opened from the inside. Then a beautiful face was revealed. She wrinkled her nose and crossed her arms as she looked at him with disdain. You're finally willing to come back? What? Towards her inexplicable mood, Xiao Su came back to his senses and looked at her with some confusion. The little fellow seemed to be like what Hua Ling said, a little unhappy. A gentle village. Chu Qingyan opened the door and walked in, leaving him alone outside. Dream immortal house, hee. How could it be a place to eat? Sure enough, whether it was the business world or the government, it couldn't be separated from that kind of place. When she thought of the big ice cube hugging a girl in his left hand and another in his right hand, she felt uncomfortable all over. Xiao Su understood. He walked in with large strides and his lips hooked into a smile. I didn't touch those people. As soon as his voice fell, Xiao Su thought for a bit and added, You know that I'm obsessed with cleanliness. Chu Qingyan turned around to look at him. She knew that the big ice cube disdained to lie, so the gloominess in her heart disappeared just like that. He really came quickly and left quickly. Then what did you go there for? She was no longer angry and a faint smile appeared on her face. She turned around and asked curiously. She had been by his side for so long, but she had never seen him go to those places. When she heard Hua Ling's report today, she was really too surprised. If I said that I went to eat, would you believe me? Xiao Su sat down in front of her. His tone was as relaxed as usual. Then he looked at the tea and Chu Qingyan automatically poured him a cup of tea. Eating in that kind of place, only Yang Qing could think of that. Chu Qingyan thought of how Yang Qing looked like an honest person, but was secretly such a cunning person. It seemed like she really couldn't keep Xiao Huan in the Yang manner. Xiao Su sipped his tea without saying a word. As for Yang Qing, who had been drinking tea at home, he had become the scapegoat for some inexplicable reason, and had also become the target of Chu Qingyan's hatred. By the way, Big Ice Cube, do you still remember the youngest daughter of the Yang family? Chu Qingyan remembered something important. Xiao Su had a premonition that something was wrong. Chu Qingyan secretly rubbed her hands. She knew that Big Ice Cube didn't like Xiao Huan, but she still wanted to discuss it with him. Big Ice Cube, I want to leave with Xiao Huan. Xiao Su tightened his grip on the teacup, but his tone remained calm. Chu Qingyan saw that he didn't get angry or show any displeasure, so she said boldly, Xiao Huan isn't doing well in the Yang residence. If she doesn't like to stay in the Yang residence, I can arrange another place for her to stay and ensure her safety. She had just dared to open her mouth when he cut her off. Chu Qingyan shook her head and continued. Xiao Huan is all alone and has no friends. Her family doesn't seem like family, so she said she wants to stay with me. I can arrange it for her. She can get to know more people and integrate into different circles. She had just finished speaking when she was cut off again. It's not the same. There's nothing different about it. She had been cut off again and again. She had asked sincerely, but he had casually rejected her. Chu Qingyan felt that her good character was about to be worn away by him. But I just want to take her away. Chu Qingyan snorted. Very good, she dared to throw a tantrum just because of an outsider. Since you've already made your decision, why do you still need to discuss it with me? Xiao Su put down the teacup in his hand heavily and stood up. Chu Qingyan rarely saw him be so cold to her. She was stunned at first, and then she looked at the tea that spilled out of the cup and suddenly stood up. Xiao Su looked at the person in front of him who had opened her arms to stop him, and his lips slightly pursed. Big Ice Cube, are you angry at me? Big Ice Cube rarely got angry, and she wasn't sure if he was angry right now. What do you think? Xiao Su suddenly felt a headache. He had already made it so obvious, but this little fellow couldn't tell. It was like all his anger had hit cotton. At this time, a claw was placed on his sleeve and gently pulled. Xiao Su lowered his head and waited for her to speak without saying a word. Big Ice Cube, I'll apologize first and then you can tell me why you're angry, all right? She gave in. She didn't know why the Big Ice Cube had a kind of dislike or hostility towards Xiao Huan the entire way. Where did the problem come from? The Big Ice Cube wasn't a petty person. Where did he go wrong? The person in front of him raised her little face and looked at him with her crystal-clear eyes. At this time, she was looking at him with doubt, worry, and innocence. But she didn't have a trace of resentment towards his inexplicable actions. Xiao Su's eyes moved and then he reached out to hug the young girl in front of him. This was the first time in so many years that he took the initiative. Chu Qingyan was already stunned by him. Then the heat that came from her cheeks was so real. Xiao Su's chin rested on her head and his eyes darkened. Ask him why he was angry? He also asked himself the same question. Did he not want the warmth that belonged to him to be taken away? When he saw the little fellow and Yang Xiaohuan for the first time, he had a strong premonition that this Yang Xiaohuan would share his warmth. As expected, it really was. In the past 20 years, before he met the little fellow, he was standing in the darkness all the time. It was her appearance that pulled him out of the darkness and brought him to the light. She was his only light. She was the warmth that he couldn't let go of in his hands. He had nothing to lose because those things didn't belong to him. But only the warmth in his arms was his. If one day he saw her releasing her warmth to others, then he would no longer be her one and only. He had always been used to doing as he pleased and had never been obsessed with anything. Whether it was the position of the first prince of the Sichuan, the glory of the god of war, or the position that his mother and those people wanted him to stand in, he had never cared about it in his heart. This time, he realized that he also had something that he wanted to monopolize. But the little fellow in front of him was still young. She didn't seem to understand. Little fellow, in your heart, am I one and only? No one would have thought that the blood-soaked god of war, the most honorable prince of Xixien, who was known as the cold and ruthless god of war, who looked high and mighty, would one day be pious, serious, worried, expectant, and panic-stricken, lowering his posture and asking such a humble question. What he wanted, warmth? Warmth, it didn't seem to be enough. It seemed that he wanted more. One and only, little fellow, I gave you my one and only, then what about you? You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.